upper body. And powerful.
That is.
A lot of massages from.
Just want to touch up with our
On you.
online folks on WebEx. Can everyone hear us okay? Yes. Perfect. Thank you.
You put them on mute.
Okay. Ready to roll? Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to a special meeting of the Madera County Board of Supervisors. Today is Monday, June 7th, 2021. We'll start off, we'll have the invocation, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, and I will go ahead and open up in prayer. Father, thankful for the opportunity to gather here today. We're thankful for our county, for the residents that we serve. We're thankful for each one of our employees. We're thankful for the team that we've assembled, and we just ask that you would guide our discussion today, give us wisdom, and just help us emerge with a sense of collaboration, cooperation, and teamwork. We ask in Christ's name, amen. Supervisor Rogers, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Celebrate our country. Remember the fallen, including the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Thank you. Let's move on to public comment. The first 15 minutes of each regular session are set aside for members of the public to address the board on any matter under the jurisdiction of the board not appearing on the agenda. The board will not take action on any items presented under public comment. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Anyone addressing the board is asked to print their name clearly on the speaker seat at the podium and state their name and county residence for the record. Supervisor Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say that I came down Road 600 this morning to come down to work, and we had a fire there yesterday afternoon, and it was about 8 fire trucks sitting there and still fighting it. It's down pretty well. They got it pretty well whipped out, and you can see where the borate planes dumped. And I stopped and asked them if they've seen what started it, and they didn't know. And I guess maybe Matt can say, is this the time they switch trucks? Because they had about 6 or 8 trucks there, and then I drove down to, it's about 10 miles from my house. I got a notice last night that said that if it gets you within a mile of my house, to evacuate. I know. Be ready.
Not a bad idea.
I know. So, but anyway, is this the time they switch trucks? Crews, I mean, because I after I left there, the fire, talked to those guys for a little bit. Then I went down the road about a mile, and there was 8 trucks and 8 pickups coming up the road.
Yeah, Supervisor Wheeler, yesterday there was 15 CAL FIRE engines on that fire, 4 Madera County water tenders, 2 Madera County engines. And this morning at 0700, they should have been doing a briefing for today's operational plan, and they were switching out. There'd be 7 engines, 2 county water tenders on that fire today. And then they'll have 5 engines tomorrow, and then the fire will be 100% contained.
Good. Yeah, I guess a lot of us out in Roscoe's place.
Yeah, and then today is also the day that CAL FIRE is going to peak staffing for our unit. So the 2 engine stations like Rancheria, Raymond, Awani, Corscold will all have 2 engines on duty a day starting today.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And then when were they going to start on Highway 41 burning again?
The Highway 41 project, that we started a couple weeks ago, and then the second night of burning, we were unable to finish that because the fire we had in Mariposa. So we extended the burn prescription for the next 2 months. So as soon as we can have a break in between fires and cool enough weather, then we'll continue that burn all the way down to the SRA boundary.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Seeing none, just announcements highlighted in red that the 21-22 budget hearings will continue day to day until concluded. With that, we'll move on to item number 3A, and we'll have the administrative officer's overview and presentation of the 2021 proposed budget and special revenue budgets.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
J&J.
Yes.
Right. We need to find another oh, well, we do have, you forgot one, Jay, Tom, Jessica.
Oh, yeah.
So the true brains of the outfit. So.
I know, that's for sure.
Yes, sir. Presented before you in the binder is this year's proposed 21-22 budget. As you can see on page I, that the proposed budget comes up to almost $415 million. The rest of the small Roman numeral I sections, Joel will be giving you somewhat of an overview of this, but just to pick out a few things on page 3 in the I pages. That's the projection or the proposal of how to apply the ARPA money to the county-wide budget. You can see that it's going to be a pretty austere budget in terms of if we did not have ARPA money, we would be looking at some pretty invasive things to try to balance the budget. However, we would also like to point out that in this projected, which it was not, I don't believe in your originally in your proposed, the beginning fund balance was going to go below your recommended $7.4 million reserve. However, with this particular string of budgets as proposed, we would be able to maintain that through the end of fiscal year or into fiscal year 2024, 2025, if revenue stays as depressed as it is right now. There's also some history here in terms of specific positions, and then specific numbers of positions going back to 2009, 2010. And then visually for you on page 9 of the small Roman numeral sections, we have a breakout by bar graph of the last 5 years of the general fund appropriations. And as we could expect, based on the board's emphasis on public protection, the public protection sector is close to being the highest number of employees, whereas public assistance has now surpassed that slightly.
1 second, Jay, on that
Yes, sir.
page. Far left, the general government / physical with asterisk there. What is the asterisk for?
I do not know the answer to that question. Joel, do you know? Is that from a previous carryover chart and we didn't carry over the footnote?
Supervisor, the asterisk, I think, is referring to appropriations for contingencies and special payments. So general government, special payments are all lumped together. There's like smaller budgets there. We will cover it in the slideshow.
I went
Yeah.
pages both ways and I couldn't find it. Referred to.
Right. We'll get that answer for you during the presentation.
Sorry.
That's okay. And then the last page is just a verbal recap of things in different areas, including the general government. And I can answer any questions, or we can proceed into Joel's presentation.
Yes, Supervisor Wheeler.
On page 10, refers to general government, special districts, $400,260. Is that as cost to support the special districts? Is that money that we gave them that they're not paying, or what exactly?
Supervisor, so which page?
It's a
on
small
It's
Roman
page 10,
numeral
Roman
10,
numeral 10, I'm sorry.
overview of proposed
It's the first
21-22
bullet point.
appropriations.
Right. So the special districts budget in the general fund is the cost of administering special districts. So your line workers, utility workers that serve. So they charge out to individual districts,
Right.
and then they pay that budget back. That special districts budget in the general fund does not have general fund discretionary dollars in it. It's offset by the individual
So it
maintenance
cost us
district.
$420,000 to run it, that they owe us. They're gonna have to have their rates increased to pay us back, or what's, is that what you're telling me?
Yes, sir.
So
Yeah, we get paid
you know-
back for what we served them, yes.
when I first got on here, 15 years ago now, First year, we had about $450,000 that we had paid out of our general fund to keep those things afloat. So we addressed the board, took us 3 or 4 years, 5 years maybe to get the staff to get busy to start raising the fees so that we wouldn't be spending our fund dollars on the districts. And now here we are, 15 years later, and we're $400,000 that we're taken out of our general fund to run them.
Supervisor, let me clarify. That is not coming out of the general fund. So it's in the general fund budget because that's where the positions are. The special districts pays the general fund for those services.
So we're not in the red 400,000?
No.
No, we're not.
We got any kind of number at all where we are in the red, or are we?
So this afternoon, each special district will be covered in that budget. There are,
Okay.
obviously, there are districts that are better off than others. I believe Public Works will be covering that part of the
Okay.
financials.
Yeah, that is something, I know. And the other question I had on the sad thing you just handed out, I found it in here too last night, that this second page here, first page, I guess it is, just, I don't know, I must have really blew it last year. We jumped from 1920, we jumped, $87 million budget. Can you give me just a kind of overview of why it went up so high?
Supervisor, may we please cover that? We have 10 slides to cover that overview, and we have that up on the visual, so it would
Will
be
that
easier
be
to
here
explain
later?
each slide by slide.
Perfect.
Clerk of the board, can we put the PowerPoint?
Out of my mouth. Yeah. Shut up, quit smiling at me like over there. I see you, Brett. Questions I had when I was looking.
I know, I liked them.
Right. Thank you, Supervisor, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Before we launch into the presentation.
Yes, Supervisor Rogers.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
sorry,
Yeah, I thought this historically funded positions growth beginning on page 4 was really explanation worthy, and I thought it something that everybody on this board really needs to study because it demonstrates that we haven't been growing willy-nilly. This is really it covers our priorities of public safety, and our growth hasn't been just explosive. This is very good narrative to explain that, and that was one of the things that we echoed previously that we were concerned about. This assuaged my grief, and I was very pleasantly surprised to read that.
Right.
So it's very
We're
well
covering
done.
it more in the presentation too. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Thank you, Joel.
Right. All right, Clerk of the Board, if you could have the PowerPoint up, please.
David going to make the presentation?
All right.
No, Tom is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, you ready?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Before we launch into the presentation, we just kind of want to cover the revised pages. You have already should have gotten copies of the District Attorney Budget Org 3510, page 9 revised. I apologize for that. It seems that we doubled up Org 3530 when we compiled the budget book. So for the first time ever in Madera County budget history, you will have a page 11.1, .2, .3, .4, because we had to insert a 9-page budget into the budget book. The other 4 pages I kind of want to go over real quick, and the clerk of the board will distribute those. The HR position summary and the general services position summaries don't change the numbers, but the notations have been revised to reflect your board's direction on the June 1st meeting. Those org structure and positions are in the budget as seeking conceptual approval of the org structure, but for further ratification at a later time. The clerk recorder position summary and the elections position summary have been revised as the clerk recorder had intended to have the accounting technician be flexibly staffed as senior accounting technician. It doesn't change the positions, but seeking flexibility to go up to the senior position. It was accounted for in the financials. It was inadvertently left off in the position summary that was printed. So with that, we can launch into the main presentation.
Joel, just to clarify, none of these changed any of the overall numbers in your budget book. They were strictly page omissions or corrections.
That's correct.
I thought it was all one. Well, that's 4 different ones.
All right, so the fiscal year 21-22 appropriation summary that we have on the screen and in your presentation, the 21-22 proposed budget for the county is $414,984,007, which is an increase of $19.4 million over the prior year. As we go through the presentation, we will demonstrate that the majority of that is growth from the public assistance sector. These are state and federal programs that we have to administer on behalf of the state and the federal government that we get little choice of. It is, however, funded with subvented dollars. The other adjustments to, especially to the general fund budget, relates to the ever-increasing cost of retirement rates and health benefit costs and just the general cost of doing business that's related to step increases and longevity. The general fund 5-year comparison by category, as demonstrated here, majority of the increase is still under the public protection, keeping true to the board's direction that public safety is the priority. The next largest increase is the public assistance category. General government increase is solely related to retirement costs and health benefit costs. And I believe the asterisk their supervisor refers to, it's general government and fiscal, but it also includes the insurance budget, the special payments budget, which is the debt service, which is growing because of the Hall of Justice facility. And the asterisk got cut off because when we plunked it into the sheet, the footnote didn't cut through, but we'll revise it to make sure it shows on the online after today's
Yeah, it
meeting.
should, because it can't see nothing right.
Right.
Thank you.
And just, you know, on the far right side, the library services, your board, we continue to make investments in the library, increases circulation. It has a modest increase, but it always has a modest increase year after year. So we do our best to direct discretionary revenue dollars when we can. This chart is a chart that we show every year to demonstrate how much of the county budget is truly discretionary at the local level. Non-discretionary, meaning restricted funding, comprise still 80% of the county budget, and these are largely your health, social services, and behavioral health programs. Out of the 20% discretionary budget, lion's share of that goes into public protection, which would include the law enforcement, corrections, probation. The next biggest is the essential government service under general government. Your functions such as auditors, assessors, county administration is included in their treasurer, tax collector. These are local functions that we can't, that we are mandated to provide. And then in smaller in terms of percentage, but certainly not an impact, library services, cooperative extension. And there's a little portion of discretionary goes to public assistance. This represents our mandated local match for these state and federal programs. I believe this is the sheet that Jay was referring to earlier. What we attempted to do here is to provide your board with a 4-year projection, including the budget year. The structural operating deficit, which is in red, represents the difference between what we think, what we project we're going to end up in terms of net county costs at the end of the fiscal year versus what we project how much discretionary revenue we're going to bring in by the end of the fiscal year. If you notice that in the net county cost structural deficit section, budgeted net county cost, NCC for short, is always higher. It's because we do incur salary savings throughout the year. In the current fiscal year, the first column, 2020-21, we adopted a budget with a net county cost of $85 million, just over $85 million, I apologize. The actual salary savings that we project this year is 4.5%, which is a savings of $2.5 million from the net county cost. This year, as has been demonstrated in the DA's office, has been extraordinary in terms of retaining staff. We believe that 4.5% salary savings is the floor. meaning it is the easily achievable percentage despite our best efforts at recruiting, positions. What we're proposing for the fiscal year 21-22 budget is to raise that salary savings to 9%. And that is part of the budget balancing measures that we are recommending today. In essence, what that will do is generate an additional 30 FTEs of vacancies at any given time across discretionary revenue funded programs, so that departments will likely would need to keep vacancies for twice as long as they kept in the current fiscal year. The hope is that it would generate a savings of $5.3 million, which represents a 9% salary savings. And if you do the math, it's not straight 9% because some of that 89 million in net county costs are for contracts and for fixed costs. So we just going to a 9% salary savings will generate 5.3 million, which is about 7% reduction in the net county costs. We do project discretionary revenues to grow in the current year from 76.2 million projected in the current year to just under 78 million in fiscal year 21-22. It's a welcome trend, but it's not the rally that we're hoping for. And as Jay had mentioned, if not for the American Rescue Plan Act dollars that we recommended on June 1st to earmark for budget stabilization, we would be talking beyond 9% salary savings as part of the 21-22 process. With that said, we highlighted the amount 21,050,214. If you go back to the June 1st item, that's exactly the amount we recommended to earmark for budget stabilization. That is the amount that if the discretionary revenues stay at the 2.5% trend, which is what's projected over the next 4 years, is the amount we'll need absent any other types of cuts, workforce reductions that we implement to balance the budget. It's important to note that if we beat projections, it brings that structural deficit gap, a lot closer. And if we rally as opposed to just a constant rebound, then we may even be able to decrease that earmark. Sorry, nice. Okay. So just to recap, the fund balance, general fund solvency at the bottom, we began the year with 7.4 million. We were able to utilize CARES Act funds on eligible services. We're able to count on 2.1 million in ARPA as part of the lost revenue uses. And the net result of that is for us to be able to preserve that fund balance through by the end of the fiscal year. And if these projections hold true, the intent is to keep that fund balance level, which is not really a very high level to begin with, considering a budget of our size, but to give us cushion so we're not, it's still an enormous challenge, but it gives us a little breathing room as we figure out how to balance this budget over the next 4 fiscal years and hopefully avoid any drastic types of workforce reduction measures, that it can be more measured over the next 4 fiscal years. It does not eliminate a 5.5 million structural deficit at the moment. So even if we go through a 9% salary savings in the next 4 years, if we don't grow beyond the 2.5%, we will still have a structural deficit in year 4. So what we're demonstrating here is that the 9% buys us time, but in the next fiscal years, we will need to reduce operating costs to bring that structural deficit in line with operating revenues.
I was just going to let him finish, and then
Okay.
I'll get to
Yeah.
questions. That way,
Yeah.
like to keep the continuity. I see he's got this rhythm going right now. I don't want to interrupt it.
I understand.
I'm just in the queue. I want his rhythm to go too.
All right, Joel, go for it,
Okay.
man.
Go, Joe,
Right.
go.
All right, so funded positions history. So Supervisor Rogers, you mentioned this sheet. So what we wanted to demonstrate here is that the peak funded positions, the funded positions the county peaked in fiscal year 2009-10, which is really just before the drastic reductions in staff that happened during the recession. Funded positions bottomed out in fiscal year 2010-11. The county lost 140 positions, seemingly, practically overnight in one budget cycle, which had resulted in workforce reductions, the extreme levels of workforce reductions being layoffs. Since then, the county-funded positions have grown, and when we compare the fiscal year 21-22 proposed funded positions, that's an increase of 198 from the bottom, the lowest funded position level the county has had. However, we wanted to provide some context with that 198 because that 198 isn't the same positions that we lost during the recession. So this is the same sheet, but we kind of grouped it more into categories. If you look at the top section, the first line and under the rightmost column, the peach-colored column, that's the 198 increase from the bottom level of position levels that we had. 70 of those were from subvented departments. So a lot of program changes have occurred in state and federal programs, one of them being realignment, and entitlement programs continue to grow, as well as the staffing that's needed to support them. So 70 of the 198 are immediately related to subvented programs. 16, actually we'll cover that in later slide, but we wanted to cover here too is what's in the proposed budget as of today. So in the proposed budget increases funded positions by 45 positions compared to the prior year. 21 of those are coming from subvented programs, like we mentioned, from behavioral health, child support, and public health, and social services. 7 of those positions are from the Community and Economic Development Department and are all related to the increased building activity that's occurring in the Rio Mesa area. These positions are funded with either permit, with fees and permit revenues. This will not increase the county's net county cost. And I don't want to speak for Matt Schreiber, but he would say that we need this to keep that, to keep our service, commitments and service levels going and to keep the economic development engine moving. One position is proposed for the fire department. It is a full-time office assistant. That is not a true increase in the sense that they have a full-time extra help office assistant, long-term office assistant, and that the fire department is proposing to go away from use of extra help to go to permanent. So there's offsetting costs for that. There are 2 positions proposed for general services. One of them is a building and crafts maintenance worker under the building maintenance division. Again, it's the same situation. We had a long-term extra help that serves the new human services campus on Road 28. It is fully funded by the subvented departments over there, mainly DSS. And that general service has received a commitment from DSS that they want to keep that person. So we want to move away from using extra help to provide that service. And then there's 2 positions in general services administration, one of them being a funding of a currently unfunded administrative analyst, which is offset by a retirement of a higher paid classification. We had an extra help general services manager that was covering parks and special projects. And the proposal is to fund a currently unfunded admin analyst in that operation to take on the work at a lower cost. And the last position in general services is the proposed facility superintendent position that will oversee grounds and building maintenance. And we'll cover that once we get into the general services budget presentation. There are 6 positions proposed to human resources as presented in June 1st too, is the consolidation of disability compliance program investigations and enhancements in recruitment and selection for subvented departments. 4 positions proposed for public works, 2 are for special districts for taking over the CSA 22C sewer treatment plant. And then 2 positions in the public works main budget to handle billing for refuse disposal and other debt service financings of maintenance districts and county service areas. There are 3 positions proposed for the sheriff's office. One is the second FTE for Riverstone based on our development agreement standards that kicks in 21-22. It is fully funded by a combination of tax increment that we receive from Riverstone, plus the difference is cut, a check is cut by the developer for the difference of the cost. That will not increase net county cost. Second position for the sheriff's office would be for emergency planning, and it's really funding an unfunded emergency services coordinator and converting it into an admin analyst that will handle emergency claims. It will be fully offset by the revenue that this position will be processing and then some. The third requested position for the sheriff, as we will cover in the budget, is to add a deputy sheriff in the civil division that will be focused on homelessness issues and serve as a homelessness liaison. And last but not the least, 3 positions for the Water and Natural Resources Department, one position for flood control and 2 related to the county GSAs. Water and Natural Resources is now 100% funded with fees and revenues from flood control, and it will not impact net county costs. So I started to go down this path before I highlighted the new positions proposed in the budget, but we kind of wanted to cover what has occurred over the past 10 years. Like I mentioned earlier, 70 positions are all for subvented programs. This did not impact discretionary revenue use. 16 positions from the from fiscal year 10-11 to the proposed budget are for community and economic development. They are all related to development activity in the Eastern County, and they are all offset with increases in permit and other fees related to development. 8 positions have been restoration of corrections positions lost by through the recession. Despite that, corrections is still 6 FTEs below the pre-recession peak. County administration staff has increased 3 positions from the post-recession low, but those positions represent the 311 call center. Actually, 4 positions represent the 311 call center, which did not exist in the admin office before the recession. So if you take that into account, the county administrative office is still 1 position less than prior to the peak. The district attorney has 13 positions increased from the bottom, and it reflects restoration of positions lost during the recession, but also a move away from using long-term extra help. So the likelihood is the district attorneys spend that money on long-term extra help, which is not an efficient way to do it, and then convert it into permanent positions over the past 3 fiscal years. The fire department is increasing by 1 position from their lowest level during the recession, and that represents the office assistant extra help conversion that we're proposing. General services is also only 1 position above the lowest level and still 5 positions below the peak pre-recessions. I'm going down the list. Information technology is 8 positions above the post-recession bottom. However, this reflects creation of the cybersecurity program that we have, as well as consolidation of IT functions from subvented departments into a central IT. So that is solely the reason for the growth in information tech positions. Probation that grew 17 FTEs from the low, that is solely related to AB 109, which was implemented in 2011. Public Works has grown 6 positions, all related to development activity. The Sheriff's Office has grown 36 from the post-recession low, but we want to note that the Sheriff's Office lost 19 FTEs overnight during the recession. Only 15 of those have been restored through time, either through, and it's not the same positions. The sheriff has reorganized and restored an equivalent of 15 FTEs of the 19 FTEs lost. There are 4 FTEs that were added there because we brought the morgue operations in-house, which was previously a contract. 3 FTEs grew from court security in the civil division to meet the demand, but this is partially offset with growth in state revenues that we received when the courts expanded. 5 FTEs in the Bass Lake and Eastern Madera County was funded either through fees or the COPS grant that was awarded to the county one year ago. 6 FTEs were funded by Valley Children's Hospital, and 1 of those FTEs is funded by the COPS grant. Again, no impact to the general fund. It's a service agreement. 2 FTEs funded through Riverstone, and then 1 FTE funded from the Justice Assistance Grant. So, and last again, but not least, there's 11 FTEs. We did not have a Water Natural Resources Department post-recession. Those FTEs are either through the county GSA budget or through the flood control budget, and all are offset by fees and revenues. That's a lot of information, so we just kind of want to, sum it up. The county lost 140 funded positions during the recession. 118 of those were funded with discretionary revenues. 22 positions were funded with subvented revenues. And while we did indeed add a total 128 general fund positions since the recession, only 35 of those were 100% funded with discretionary revenues. A majority of those positions are from public safety. As I mentioned, 22 were from the sheriff's office, 10 from the DA's office, and 3 positions, and that includes the 3 new positions proposed for the next budget year, which is 1 for the SO for the homeless liaison, and the fire department support staff, which is a conversion of an extra help, and then 1 position for animal services, which is also a conversion of an extra help, long-time extra help support that they receive. So why do we have a deficit? So the structural deficit in large part, not mainly due to positions, although it could, you could balance it in positions, but the structural deficit is caused largely due to escalating retirement and benefit costs. If we compare 10-11 benefit costs to the present proposed benefit cost for next year using the same 1,300 positions, CalPERS costs would have grown 19.1 million regardless, even if we didn't add a single position. That is just growth in the CalPERS rate, which is 130% growth in 10 years. Now, I wouldn't say this is all bad. It is good. CalPERS is doing things to make their funds solvent for a lot of folks, but it does cost money, and that's where that increase is coming from. On a slight silver lining, health benefit rates is 5% lower from 10 years ago. So there is some savings to offset that at $760,000, apples to apples comparison. The other big increase that we have is the cost of our retiree health program, which was just under $1.7 million in fiscal year 10-11 to what we're projecting to $4.2 million in the budget year. That's an increase of 152%. All else being equal, benefit and retiree health grew a total of $20.9 million in 10 years. Approximately $8 million of that was funded by discretionary revenues. Other cost factors that impact this, although some of this was captured, are the cost of salary adjustments, one that we implemented in 2016, and we did 2-3% COLAs that it took effect January 2019 and 2020. Those all kind of factor into the increase. So what are our recommendations moving forward as we go through the budget? As we mentioned, we want to implement a mandatory 9% salary savings target across all functions that utilize discretionary revenues. We will work with departments to develop a process to achieve that 9%. And the reason why we point out 9% target for discretionary revenue departments is it does not help the cost plan if we blanket implement the 9%, even in fully funded operations. We want those fully funded operations to keep shouldering the cost of the central service departments and all of that. We don't want to inadvertently impact our retirement fund because we're blanketly applying the 9%. That's just the reality. The 9%, the deficit is in discretionary revenues. We have to work with discretionary revenue departments. Some of those strategies that we might propose would be establishing a minimum amount of time positions are held before a requisition is approved for filling. That way we can create that flow of vacancies over the next 12 months. We will work with departments to see how we can further reduce extra help expenditures, move away from relying on extra help spending. In some cases, unfunding positions would be the necessary outcome, and whenever that's achievable, we will work with departments to do that. And then reducing operating costs that can achieve the same target. And in some areas, reducing the positions will be more detrimental than cutting service agreements that will, we're after the dollar target. in discretionary revenue, so we will work with departments and we'll be flexible in achieving those dollar targets. We also are making moves to reduce long-term debt by prepaying the maximum we can pay without paying any kind of prepayment penalties. And in the proposed budget, there is $336,960 included to pay down 10% of the outstanding debt for the Oakhurst Government Center. So we're hoping that by doing this, paying the maximum without paying a penalty, that we go through the next 4 fiscal year with less debt and therefore less operating debt expense. And again, goes without saying, we will continue to work with departments on identifying efficiencies. This has been an ongoing thing. There's a lot of automation that's already implemented. We will continue to look for those efficiencies using one-time spending to lower operating costs. That concludes our presentation for now, and we're open for any questions.
Supervisor Rogers.
Yes, there's a lot riding on those projections out 5 years, a great deal. Can you give me certainty that you have been conservative in your thinking? And I just want to hear where you're at on that.
Yes, sir. So the revenues are projected at a 2.5% rate over the next 4 years, which we can guarantee you is as conservative as we can get. Because of certain adjustments occurring in property taxes, we are projecting flat over 1 year and then a modest 2% over the next out years. We are projecting sales tax to grow at a steady curve, 3%, which is reflective of recovery. The way we interpret the 2.5%, it is an achievable goal. Can we beat it? Absolutely. Absent any market crash or housing bubbles occurring, we should be able to beat the 2.5%.
That is exactly my concern, is the housing bubble. And traditionally, that's what drove us into recession last time, or let's say it led in recession, 2007. And we're quickly approaching the same scenario I've seen every cycle in my lifetime. So I'm going to assume, and I think rightfully so by the scientific evidence, that it's going to happen again. And when it does, we need to be conservatively prepared for that.
Right. And I think that we share the same concern, and I think that's reflected in the way we're approaching. So I use the term workforce reduction, and I know that might have some stronger implications, but to us too is achieving that reduction through attrition. So that way we're not laying off people, but as positions become vacant, it becomes a deep dive on, can we afford not to fill this for 3 months or 6 months or even a year? Because we need to get to that 9%. If things start going south in the housing market, then we need to accelerate that. We feel that in the attrition levels that we experience in the county, if we tighten the spigot, at this point, we should be able to achieve that cost reduction in terms of salaries and benefits without having to result to actual layoffs, which is what occurred in 2010-11. So
you had 1 year flat, right? You had 1 year flat without growth. I would assume this year CPI, things are going to move up as far as what's happening with revenue this year.
Right.
What's the projected with? That would be 2%, right?
So for property taxes, because residential is still going strong.
It's tied to Prop 13.
Right. Tied to Prop 13, the 2% is, what we actually are, at least there are some adjustments occurring with the assessor's office that's depressing some of that in the short term.
Right.
We can't project that as a trend because it's an adjustment, right? But the reason why we're not going beyond 2.5%, even though sales tax is projected to become stronger, is that, we have to keep our eye on, what's going to happen. Is it going to be the same bubble in 2010-11? Depending on who you talk to, some folks are saying it's not going to be as bad because the fundamentals are strong in terms of there's not a lot of subprime mortgages out there. Will it be? It's more of a correction. So 2.5% we feel is under projecting what the trend is right now, with the eye on if that happens, we would still be in that curve. And if we beat it, then we would use less of the ARPA money.
Right.
And then it helps us bring that, but it doesn't change the fact that we're carrying a 5.5 million structural deficit in this plan
Right.
in year 4.
Right.
So if we grow 5% opposed to 2.5%, which is roughly about $2 million.
So we should encumber future growth toward over the next 5 years. We need to probably do that in our motion when we pass this budget to encumber future growth.
Correct. And I think in the staff recommendations, we mentioned that the CEO is recommending that any discretionary revenues that beat these projections be earmarked to bridge that structural deficit in the out years.
Yeah.
And
Have to.
we, in this 4-year projection, this 4-year plan, so to speak, is something that we plan to update your board on every 6 months. In mid-year, we will bring you where 2020-21 actually ended, where we think we're trending for 21-22, so you can kind of see where things might head in 22-23.
One last thing, keep your eye on inflation too. Don't underestimate its power to diminish our ability and capacity all around. Inflation, it's hit a high for 50-year high, and so we need to be careful.
Supervisor Wheeler.
Thank you. The session started December '07 and ended in June '09.
Yes, but it didn't really truly hit the property tax revenues until the 10-11 fiscal year because of the timing.
Because of
Yes,
the timing.
but yes, you're correct.
We lost 198 employees.
140 funded. 140 funded.
140 funded, and the
Yes.
rest of them submitted. Now we're back up again to that, obviously. Couple of things. One thing that really concerns me, we had that $7 million fund balance, that we've been riding on, hoping we keep it that last year, but if we don't do what we're supposed to be doing, we only have $2 million left, 18. 1.8, 1.9. So our funding balance hasn't grown. You said it was low at even 7. Well, it used to be $200+ million budget. Now we're $400 million plus budget. We're only $7 million. It should be at least minimum $14 million, right? Be economically
At least.
stable and
Yes.
run like we should be running a business.
Right. So, yes, it should be at least. Actually, if it's achievable, you want to go 10% of the
Right.
whole general fund, which would be 40, not just discretionary. And I think, there's just been a lot of cost pressures. So what we were trying to demonstrate is only 35.
We're spinning out of our.
Well,
we
only
got coming in, is what I'm saying.
Right. So Supervisor, I think if we go back to, out of the 140, we lost 118 of those were discretionary funded positions. And even though we restored general fund positions, only 35 of those positions that we added are discretionary funded over the years. So the lion's share of that 198 are either driven by subventids, are driven by new revenues from Rio Mesa, right? Because we have service level agreements for the sheriff's office, like contracts like the Valley Children's. And
So
right.
everybody knows when I got elected 15 years ago, 16, whatever it was, we had never, I think it was like 17 positions in the sheriff's department, never funded. Last 3 years, we finally have funded the proposed sheriff's position, which I think is the best thing we could have done. Tell that by our crime's been down for the last 3, 4, 5 years, what have you, and I think that has a lot to do with our sheriff departments and having a full funded deal. And I got to thank Jay and Tyson now for always bringing that to us at the board every year at the budget hearing. And I don't mind that one, but some of these other positions that our biggest cost is our positions, our
Correct.
employees. And so we're still growing like mad on our employees, and we got that 5 million, you say 6 million deficit each year. We're gonna pay for the CARE dollars. We've got that 21 million. We're gonna try to balance that out. I'd say we ought to start being a little economically more,
Supervisor Wheeler, if I just may, clerk of the board, could you pull up the PowerPoint? I just want to kind of clarify one of your comments.
okay.
So say on this sheet, if you could see, there's the green column and the peach column on the
I
right,
got it
right?
here.
So,
Let me find it here.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
so in the green column, under other, it's kind of cut off a little bit on the screen, but the last line that says minus 34,
Minus 34.
if you can see that as just on top of 58.
Page 9.
I got 10. Page 10. Says.
Slide 10 of the PowerPoint.
So where do you see that at? Minus? Oh, right there. Okay.
So
I
that,
found it now.
so
Other.
the categories above are either your subventeds or your public safety departments that we highlighted. And each of those either have really good explanation why we added them, but majority of those are revenue offset. If you look at the other, that's your animal services, library, assessor, tax collector, auditor. It is still 34
What
positions
about
down.
district attorney and the HR? Those are big growth.
Right. So district attorney grew, but as we noted in the presentation, they've relied on a lot of long-time extra help.
You said extra help. How
Right.
many extra help do we have in there?
I don't know offhand, but what the effort of the district attorney over the past 4 years was to move away from.
Extra help, I agree, I don't
Right,
mind that,
right.
but what, our crimes down and everything else, and I was looking at the money we pay for our people that defend the convicts, their budget's barely up, but our DA is way up.
If Supervisor, you're referring
We
to the
still
public
pay
defender,
We still pay those DA help, still pay those positions.
right, but is way less now than it used to be. So it used to be, I think, and Jeff might come up to correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think at one point we had 3 extra help attorneys on staff, but they're not really temporary attorneys, they're always there.
Right,
So I think they've moved away from that, which is part of the reason why their positions have grown above what was just beyond restoration from what was removed during
the
the
budget's up.
recession.
no, I think that's on.
Yes, supervisors. Now,
So-
part
so
of that
if it's
increase,
up, that means there's extra people.
So-
Extra help, you're still paying them.
right, so I would note though, the reason why DA's budget grew that much is that we budgeted salary savings in the current year and they had 0 attrition. So we had to put that back to the DA's office. So some of that the difference is, would say artificial in terms of not adding cost. They grew because we adopted a budget with a 5% salary savings and they had 0 people leave. So we had to put that, and that amounts to about 250,000 for them. So,
So it went up 500,000.
right, or just under 500,000,
Just
but
under.
when you look at the salary, the retirement is in line. They didn't add any
I mean,
positions.
I'd like to get a report from them. I don't know if Jeff wants to do it, anybody else is. The crime.
I'm right here. I'm right here if anybody has a minute to listen.
The crime's been down and everything else, so I'm just wondering what it went up.
Sally, would you like to make a comment?
I'd love to.
Thank you.
Okay, so we did convert a lot of our extra help into permanent positions. I think that was 6 or 7 of those. The other thing to keep in mind is that there's been a minimum of growth over the last 10 years in my department. And when you look at the growth in the sheriff's department, every time the sheriffs add a deputy, and by the way, we don't just handle sheriff's reports, we handle all the growth from the Madera Police Department, all the growth from Chowchilla, all the growth from the California Highway Patrol. All of those officers submit reports. Supervisor Wheeler, I don't know where your information is coming from that crime is down, but what I see is crime is rising. We're seeing a rise in recidivism rates. We're seeing a rise in people being paroled to our community and other communities. And the budget as it is, is well positioned for us to cover all of our calendar requirements, to prosecute cases, and to focus on doing justice and keeping Madera County safe.
So
If there's a specific question I missed, I'd be more than happy to address it.
You don't do the probation, do you?
No?
You said probation is up, so
No, parole.
parole.
When people get paroled into our community, very often they recidivate. That is, they commit new crimes. They're rearrested by the sheriff, the police, Chowchilla Police, the Highway Patrol, the Department of Forestry. Those reports all come to us and we prosecute them.
Yeah, I know that. I just don't understand what, I don't understand how it's grown that much, you know. I'm just trying to find the old days. It was 38 and now it's 47.
Supervisor.
When it was 38, Supervisor Wheeler, when it was 38, we had 6 or 7 full-time extra help positions. So starting from the fact that I went to law school because I wasn't good at numbers and I've been working like heck to catch up with this budget stuff, that feels like 45 right there. So we did add a couple, and as the courts expand, there are more courtrooms and we have more obligation to cover those courtrooms. Additionally, as we shift away from incarceration as a community and we move towards rehabilitation, when we're dealing with rehabilitative or collaborative courts, those take much more time and intense focus on the part of our attorneys. We can't have an attorney in a collaborative court handling 100 or 200 cases like our mainline prosecutors do. In those collaborative courts, you have prosecutors focused on 10 or 15 defendants. Now, that's not their full-time job. They handle other calendars and they do other things as well. But it does require, as the law has taken away with Prop 47 and Prop 57 and AB 109, our ability to incarcerate these people long-term, moved us toward rehabilitation. That's more intensive and it takes more time for each prosecutor to come together with a team of collaborators and find a plan to save this defendant, to move this defendant out of a criminal lifestyle and into a productive lifestyle. It's effective, but it takes more time and it takes more effort on the part of our office.
Yeah.
We love doing it because it makes our community safer.
Right.
And we
That's
really
the main
appreciate the fact that the board has funded us to do it.
Right.
Right.
And
agree
Sally,
with
sorry, to add to that, there are no new positions proposed for the DA in this budget. So that growth is relative that occurred in the past years. But their positions are staying flat from this year to the next year's budget. I just want to
Yeah,
clarify
but they
that.
grew from last year to this year.
Yes, they did.
Right.
Yes.
That's what I was getting at. What I'm trying to say was, looking at all these things you guys gave us, for all these positions and everything from, 209 to 210 up to now. I'm just not trying to pick on the DA. I just look at the one that has the biggest numbers here, that and HR, sheriff. The sheriff, I know that, I don't think, how many new positions is the sheriff? 3? Is that what you said?
For the proposed budget, 3 positions. One of them is Riverstone, which is fully funded. One of them is for emergency services claiming, which is reimbursed
Right.
from FEMA funding and OES.
Right.
One
I'm just looking
position
at
is
ones
true
that I think
discretionary.
is coming out of our budget.
Right. And that's the homelessness
It's
liaison.
making that $6 million that we got to take out of the CARES Act, try to get us back up to half-ass balance, which it isn't.
Correct.
By what you just said. So I'm just trying to find out, and then HR is growing. I mean, I don't know, 09, 010, we had 11, now we got 18.
Yes. So that the proposed budget reflects a growth, and as we will cover in the HR budget, those are fully funded with subvented funding. So
All
it
of
doesn't
them?
all of them.
The
And
whole
it
HR
does.
department?
And I'm sorry.
The whole HR department is that way?
No. So the increase, because it's consolidating functions normally performed in those subvented departments, the funding is moving to HR, and we will cover it in the HR budget presentation.
Okay, when we get to those.
Right. But I just kind of want to point out that even though it's
Well,
increasing.
What I'm
yes.
trying to point out is that people is what's making our budget jump up that high and be in a deficit. We're living more than our means, is what I'm trying to say. And how do we stop that?
Supervisor.
Positions,
Yes.
bottom line.
Positions
And
or
we
revenue
keep
growth.
growing
Those are
more
two- yeah.
people,
Right.
and we haven't got the money to pay for them. How do we do that? We got to have a balanced budget, and I don't know how we're going to do it. One of the things, like the animal services, I think that's one of the things we ought to be working with the city, Madera City, to maybe pay for that position. I know it's extra help, but, and I think they need it because I don't think they've ever been caught up, personally. And maybe we ought to work with the city to pay for that extra position. That, because, I mean, we're sitting here to try to negotiate with them for the last 3 or 4 years. Hadn't getting there, I think, from what I met with Jay last week. And then on page 12, the retiree health costs and all that, you know, we've been warned and warned and warned by CSAC of those financial workshops that I always go to those because I want to see where in the heck our money is going to be going in the future. I'm long gone off of this board, and it really shows it right here. 1.6 in 2010 to 4.2
Right.
this year. So how do we start slowing that down? Do we start negotiating with the unions now to start slowing down some of this retirement health costs? I mean, there's how many people, how many businesses, and how many counties and cities pay for health costs and et cetera when they retire?
Supervisor, those are all excellent points, and I'm going to ask Elba to respond to the, because those are all lap into labor negotiations. But before, I kind of want to reiterate the point we were trying to make. We lost 118 discretionary revenue funded positions during the recession. We've only restored 35 that's discretionary revenue funded. And I don't want to characterize that it's only because it does cost money.
How much
But I
is
think-
35 employees, just average?
30,
10 million?
$100,000. So $3.5 million if you average. I want to point out that, yes, while balancing it now will likely mean less staffing, the deficit is due to the explosive growth of how much retirement costs these days, how much retirement health, and that your departments did as good a job trying to not, because the direction from the board is we're not going to restore the whole 118. And what we just want to point out is we didn't, right? A lot of things that we added are revenue funded, subvented, driven by development. Right?
Those are, I can see that, but
Right.
I'm talking about ones, for some reason, we're getting way over what we got coming in.
Right, because the cost of a position in terms of benefits grew 152% over 10 years. I think, and some of that is salary adjustments, and I'm not going to argue against salary adjustment. That's what we need to do against competitive, but it does cost money.
Oh, I agree.
Right.
We got to be
So-
competitive, but
Right.
can we be competitive and lean and meaner?
Correct.
Leaner and meaner.
Good morning,
Yes,
Elba
Elba.
Gomez with Human Resources. So Supervisor, yes, we are trying to negotiate the health insurance costs with the unions. In the past, we've tried that, and certain unions agreed, but they all have to agree for us to go to the legislature to
I
change.
pushed for that, so you wasn't here, and I tried to get 20%, pay 20%, like every other business out in the real world usually
And we still
does.
have that as part of,
Yeah.
as we're trying to negotiate with them.
So
that
I
there's-
think that we got to start pushing that, and if they're all listening to this, they'll see what these costs are. That one page puts it pretty plainly, but that's not all of it. The other is the retirement, so and they get that when if they retire, so that's the thing we got to work on too.
We're the only
And we haven't
county
really
that does
worked
that.
on
I don't think there's, the research that we've done, there's no other counties that pay for health insurance when somebody retires. But again, there has to be an agreement and support from the unions for us even to go to the legislature. And so right now, there's some that don't support it. And so we're
I
trying
think
to.
most of them probably don't.
There's only two, I think, or
Well,
actually one that does not support it. And
Yeah.
so we have to continue to have those negotiations with them.
I know it took us a long time to get that 5%.
Yeah.
Another thing, maybe it's time to do another study on efficiency of all of our departments. We haven't done, I don't know when that study was done. Look that date up. But, a lot of things have changed. IT has changed. I mean, they're one of the big departments really grown. But I know what happened when MCTC got busted last year by those hackers. If we don't have that kind of support in IT, we can all go down, because, I mean, this is a little bit of paperwork we got for this budget. It used to be this thick.
Right.
So we go run everything through IT now, and it makes a big difference, so, but I don't know if we got great department heads here. We are competitive now with our neighboring counties, which that was one of my main goals when I got elected. I want to keep that. But so I think maybe it's time to try to do another study just to see what's going on.
Yeah, the last class in
I
comp
know
study.
you're expert at what you do. Everybody out here is expert at what they do, and I'm no expert at nothing. I just got to see what you people give to me.
Right.
And sometimes when you do a study like that, it opens everybody's eyes.
The last big study that was done, from my understanding, was 1990
No.
for
I had one
positions.
done when I was been elected.
Oh, okay, so
And
for
that's how
positions
we-
only.
That's how we put you where you are now. It wasn't that way.
restructuring,
It was
okay.
already different. The county council was redone. We redone the RMA and all that. We were spending extra money out there at Walmart like you can't even believe, because we had a whole different thing out there. Got shit canned all that and put it up on the third floor, which was totally empty at that time.
Right.
And that all came from that study. So time that, Jay is doing a heck of a job. I think he's done a heck of a job as a sheriff. He's doing here, but any little thing that we can do to help us try to balance some of this stuff. I don't like to see us, one time that we were $12 million in the red, Eric come to us at our budget hearing and say, hey, I got a plan that we'll do in 3 years that we'll get rid of that thing. We didn't have 20 million or 30 million coming from the feds or the state who gave that to us that pat us on the back and say, hey, keep spending. Here's some money to help you out. We didn't have that. We got it done. I think it's time we got done that now. Instead of just spending beyond our means. All I have to say right now. Moment. Got a lot of questions from reading this. I got a lot of notes, if you see here. I'll scoot past over.
All right, very good. Supervisor Frazier.
Yeah, first of all, thank you. Although I don't like the numbers, and I like this is a very well done presentation. I like the history and then the forward-looking portion of it. I just want to commend all of you for a very well put together budget and a realistic budget. And it's never easy to bring bad news. It's always easier when, oh, look at, we've got money, we're building up a fund balance and we're doing all this. But sometimes you have to bring the bad news, and I appreciate how you did it. A few of the questions and then some clarifications just from my point of view where I saw it. I think up here the feeling of from the board is, there's only one place where we can we can't control the benefits, we can't and that cost. So really the only place that we can control is how big the organization is or isn't. And so I think that's just what we're trying to kind of laser focus in on. One of the things, Measure L not passing, but we're still trying to add positions as we can. Measure L was going to bring in, was it 12, 14 million?
12.
Yeah, 12 million a year. So, and we're adding some of those positions because we knew how important it was, regardless of whether or not that had passed. And so that is going to add to our budget looking worse, but we're doing what needs to be done. So I think that's a big part. On the ARPA, does that all come in at one time, or does it come in?
In two pots.
in
So
two
we
pots.
received 50% of it last week. The second 50% should arrive within 12 months of the first. That's how the law was written.
And so where does that get captured? Does that go into our fund balance to disperse from there, or where? Because I don't see that.
Right. So the ARPA money is held in a special revenue fund, and we have a special
So it's
revenue
in the
fund
spe-
set up
yeah.
for that, similar to CARES, but under a different org. There are, in the interim final rule, there are calculations you go through to identify how much of that you can use for lost revenue replacement.
Mhm.
We went through those calculations based on the interim final rule, and that's where the approximately 6 million a year number that we have plugged in that amounts to 21 million over 4 years came from. Again, it's an interim final rule, so we expect a final rule coming shortly, but it's all based, in a nutshell, what the lost revenue component on ARPA allows a local jurisdiction to do is to trend 4.1% growth from fiscal year 18-19 out to 23-24. And the difference between your actuals and that trend is what you can count as lost revenue.
Mhm.
It makes the big assumption that we all would have grown 4.1% had it not been for COVID or other factors. But they blanketed all related to COVID. To that point, though, in 18-19, we were growing 4.8, 4.9% prior to that. So the ARPA assumptions aren't that far off from what our actuals were, except in 19-20, we took a dip. So all of these actions that were taken to add the 35 discretionary revenue positions, accommodating because we know retirement rates, as we knew, is increasing, but that was based on a revenue curve that didn't factor in a dip in 19-20 and a slow recovery. So that's one of the major contributors to that. Yes. Would we be more balanced without the 35 positions? Absolutely. That's almost $4 million a year. But we also can't ignore the fact that those positions were either added or those budgets were adopted with a above 4% trend, and COLAs were given based on that revenue trend, and that revenue trend didn't materialize. So now we're left with a deficit, right? And those all kind of roll in together. And that's what we're trying to, again, I'm going to repeat it again, because I do think department heads pay tremendous attention before they request for positions, is that out of the 118 we lost during the recession, only 35 of those in discretionary revenues have been added. And those 35, there's always good stories and justifications for it, but the reality is, you're right, Supervisor Wheeler is right. When benefits costs are up, revenues are down, it's only in those positions where the board can balance. And hence the recommendation to, as the first step, force that 9% salary savings, which will inevitably reduce the workforce through attrition.
So in that 9% salary savings, so by way of months, right? Was it at 4.5? Is that 3 months? At 9, is that 6 months that we don't? What is it? And is
right?
Can we get there by pushing that to 9 months or whatever? Even more.
So what would really need to happen? So at 4.5%, that's an average of 30 FTEs that we're carrying in discretionary positions at any given time. Doubling that would be additional 30 FTEs. We, under a normal circumstance, we may lose maybe 2 or 3 through attrition in any given month, and so we keep, in 10 months, we can get the additional 30 by holding the other 30 vacant. So that's I think that's the operational process that we would have to work with HR in consultation with the departments, because we also don't want to implement something that's, we want the departments to weigh in. We know we need to get to an average of 60 FTE vacancies at any given time. But just straight numbers at 2 or 3 FTEs attrition every month, we can get there in 10 months.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be the right kind of mix because we don't know who,
Yeah, we don't know.
we don't know who. But as those come up, that conversation happens, that designation gets put in based on a process that's to be agreed upon with department heads.
So 60 FTEs at any given time is that
The
that would be
9%.
9%. So
In discretionary revenue funded operations. So we have more vacancies than that,
Yeah,
but
there's-
yeah,
yeah.
right.
right.
Doesn't count.
I mean, it does because it is taxpayer
Right.
dollars from somewhere, right? It's we still have that fiduciary responsibility. So when we say subvented, yeah, it doesn't affect here, but we still have that duty to make sure that that money is being spent correctly as well. I think is a lot of times, and I even I was like, oh, subvented, like who cares, right? Like that doesn't affect us, but it does, and it's still important to stay on top of it. Yeah, so I think the whole point was just that, and Supervisor Rogers had asked the question about how conservative these are because we're up here and we're what's going to be the takeaway is that we just want to get rid of, we don't want to have this many employees and we want to get rid of them. And that's not, I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the point. I think the point, we don't want to get to a point where we're taking projections that we can't meet and where we're forced to get rid of people. And I think that's the scary part is saying, okay, if we've grown to this many and something happens, then we have to get rid of people. And that's not something we want to do. It's not good for morale. It's not good for the organization. It's not good for individuals having to worry about that. And when we make these decisions and we take a conservative approach, it's to protect our employees, to make sure that they have very stable, gainful employment, that they can come to work happy knowing that they're doing something that matters to the community, and they're not always worried that we've spent beyond our means, and now because we didn't budget correctly, now they've lost their job. And that's I think I just want to make that point clear as to why we're doing this, and it's not because we don't want to have this huge workforce. We don't want to have a workforce that we have to retract on at some point because we didn't take the conservative approach that I believe you have. I believe this budget is taking that into account. But I would also, I want to see us raising the fund balance and having some money going towards that to start, in these next few years, we need to start chipping away at this fifth year, $5.5 million in some way through salary savings, through revenue increase, wherever we can. So those are my points, and I do thank you for a wonderful presentation.
Supervisor Rogers.
One of the things that I wanted to mention is that our managers are going to have to get innovative in their thinking to look for efficiencies that we haven't looked for before. You got to study it, mull it, and make sure that that we're doing what we should be. But also, I've wrote down here that back when Governor Brown did tiering on the retirement levels, that was a good thing, and it was something that reduced the state's cost and the county's cost. Tiering on benefits for future hires, reducing those benefits, that's going to be an important component of survival in the future, because I believe people are more amiable for people coming into a new contract to be under different rules than they've been under, for years and years in their tenure. It kind of feels like you're changing the rules, so people don't like that, and I don't blame them. Nobody likes that. So tiering for new hires ought to be a definite consideration.
Supervisor Gonzalez.
Yes, thank you. Joel and staff, thank you for the presentation. On that $30 million that's coming in, does that go into an interest-bearing account?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And then I just wanted to echo some of the sentiments. I think reviewing this budget over the last couple of days, it was clear to me that it's a very conservative budget, so I thank you for that. And moving forward, I know that some departments will want to restructure, and so with that, that could cause some changes. I'm not trying to interfere with any of the functions that any of the departments are trying to do. And I think it was our CAO that said that he would rather have 3 really good employees than 5 mediocre. So with the restructuring, I think we're going to start seeing a lot of that, and I appreciate that. And I would like it to be fully transparent so that we can justify it to people when we're asked about that, and even with HR. So it wasn't a hard no, but it's just that I didn't understand, and it wasn't really demonstrated in last week's item. So I appreciate that, and I hope to hear about that tomorrow when it's on the agenda. So thank you.
Supervisor Wheeler.
Yeah, just one last question. Does it cost us very much for these subvented employees? You know, but
I'm sorry, Supervisor.
I keep turning it away because I got so much stuff here on my desk. Does it cost our general budget very much money for subvented employees?
Discretionary revenues, you mean?
Yeah.
No. So public health, behavioral health, and child support have 0 discretionary revenue dollars in their budget, because there is no matching requirement. They have realignment, and they have state and federal funds.
There's no matching, Doug, but I mean for just our
support.
Our support.
They pay for those support too. So those are recovered by the general fund.
Some of our grant dollars and stuff like that too. I mean, like the sheriff got hired 5 more people grant for 3 years to hire those 3 deputies. Does that cost us any money?
So there are matching requirements for those grants. So depending on the grant, I think Supervisor, you're referring to the COPS grant. There is a matching requirement to the COPS grant. But that's different from the subvented departments. The only subvented department that has a local match requirement is DSS. So that's baked into the sharing ratios of the program.
Is it very much? 5%? 20%?
On average, is 9%, 8 or 9%.
Okay.
Now, most of it is covered with the
I'm just trying to see
realignment.
where we could try to come up with 10, 20, 30 million, whatever it's going to be to get us back into.
Supervisor, we are, so we have always, and we've continued to basically charge the fair share to third-party programs. So while we can work on efficiencies, with departments, I don't believe there's much to be shifted, so to speak, right?
Okay.
We make sure that, like any central service departments, and we have to make sure it's fair too, right? So it's not just simply shifting the cost,
We got to
right?
be what its actual costs are. I
Right.
mean, we
But
come up,
I
you
can
adjust that every year too, right?
Right. I can confidently say that subvented department operations are paying their fair share of central service and internal service departments, and that the general fund is not subsidizing any of those. And the only discretionary revenues in those departments are the ones that we have no choice over, because we have a maintenance of effort.
Well, the bottom line is, I think that you do one excellent job. Budget, going over all that stuff, weekend. Broke down really good. I got a lot of questions, but I'll ask as we go along.
Okay.
Because I interrupt everything enough as it is. But this summary, it seems like I had that summary before the meeting last time. I don't know. Maybe I didn't. But I love this summary because it really explains everything. And I think general public, whoever might be listening out there, can understand this 10 times more than they can. I think that's important, and I think you've done a hell of a job in getting that out.
Right. And thanks to the team, I mean, we all put that together, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a team that done this, I know. It takes team to do that. Like I said earlier, us board members are only as good as you guys are out. We don't have good.
Yeah, people.
Letty just said, okay, if we got 3 excellent people compared to 5 mediocre people, makes a difference. But that's where we used to be here. I think we've come a long way from what we used to be.
Thank you, Supervisor. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Supervisor, shall we continue?
I just have one quick question on, this is real quick on the subvented, does the state, when it's doing that, does it take care of the retirement benefits and medical, and then even like once they retire, or does that then get picked up by us like through the medical benefits?
So on the retiree health, so the retiree health, the subventeds pay for a portion of that based on the proportionate share of
Retirees? Okay.
And
It just dawned on me, I'd never asked that question, you know.
Good question.
Yeah, and so when we're looking at subvented and just saying, oh, you know, that's subvented, so perfect.
the only thing that the subvented funding sources won't ever fund is prepaid depreciation, which is why we structure all our capital acquisitions in a way that the subventeds can pay for it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, perfect. That's very helpful.
I'd like to mention one thing before we get going. First of all, where we are today should be no surprise to anybody. We've seen it coming for the last 5 or 6 years. So if we're sitting here going, what the heck is going on? We've seen it building up to this point. There's 3 things that have led to this, and one of them, well, there's many things, but one of them is the pension costs. And they've been going up and up and up, and without keeping pace with what the returns are. We can thank Governor Davis for that back in 1998, 1999, when it looked like things were really skyrocketing as far as returns. Then 2000 hits, the returns fall off the cliff, but our pension costs keep going up. And I'm not blaming the employees. It's what you signed up for at the time, and it looked pretty good. And so that's happening, but it's hit the budget. The second thing is COVID. We've had the COVID thing. That's something we didn't see 5 or 6 years ago. Nobody saw it coming 5 or 6 years ago, but that was coming out of left field. And finally, we've got all of our unfunded mandates, and we've got all of our regulations, and we've got all of law enforcement. There's been so much more pressure on law enforcement because things have been sent down to the local level. Meanwhile, we've got our state of California, our governor, bragging about a $75 billion surplus. And it would be sure nice to see some of that money here on the local level. In the meantime, we're the ones that are sitting here on the front line serving our people, serving the citizens of our county. And again, talking about cuts here and cuts there. When's the last time we saw a state employee get cut? And that's not going to happen because they've got this surplus, and it's something that would be nice to see shared a little bit on a local level, which I believe it is somewhat on the subvented funds that we're talking about. But still, this, again, the situation we're in today, it doesn't surprise me one bit. Yeah. And it shouldn't surprise any of my colleagues either because we've seen it coming. So with that, Joel.
And they're coming up with
Rob, I
newly
want to say
suspended
one thing on
versus.
that $78 or $75 billion. Well, the state analyst had a big article in Professional B about a week and a half ago. I was going to bring it. I should have. He used that 30-something billion out of education dollars to put onto that. There's only about 30 to 35 billion extra dollars. He added that to that.
I want to apologize.
That's not even a true number that he's using, bragging out there because he's afraid he can get recalled.
Well, there's another part
Governor
of that too.
Newsom, I just want to
23
apologize
billion.
to you because only 30, 35 billion
I know.
dollars.
Hold it. You got to subtract the 24 billion that the unemployment fund is out. So you take 24 billion off of that.
Well, that doesn't count. That's just,
Well,
budget.
your
deficit.
numbers are wrong. But yeah, instead of funding unfunded mandates, they started new programs. So
Right.
that's great.
So thank you.
Right.
Joel.
Thank you,
Mr.
Rob.
Chairman, we'll go through the budget presentations, beginning with the child support budget.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. This is Yvette Gomez with administration. I will be introducing the first recommended budget for your consideration, which is the Child Support Services budget, which begins on page 1 of the budget book. Total recommended expenditures of $3,634,000 $428,606 represent an increase of $429,433 from the previous fiscal year, mainly due to the cost of recommended staff. The budget reflects 46 allocated positions, of which 10 are currently unfunded. Sarah Honeycutt, Director of Child Support Services, is available for any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on.
The next group of budgets for your consideration is the district attorney budgets, which begin on page 9 revised of the budget book. Total recommended expenditures of $7,558,694 represent an increase of $881,258 from the previous fiscal year based on the true cost of the department, including the cost of recommended staff, professional services, and other general office expenses. The proposed budget reflects 54.7 allocated positions, of which 6.7 are currently unfunded. Jeff Dupraw, Assistant District Attorney, is available for any questions.
Any questions of Jeff? Doesn't look like it. Thank you.
The next group of budgets for your consideration is the sheriff's budget, which begin on page 39 of the budget book. Total recommended expenditures of $29,119,682 represent an increase of $2,221,535 from the previous fiscal year. This increase is primarily due to the updated retirement and health benefit rates. The proposed budget reflects 148 allocated positions, an increase of 3 positions from the previous fiscal year. The sheriff is recommending the addition of 3 funded positions in his proposed budget. The first position is to fund an unfunded emergency services coordinator and convert it into an administrative analyst. This position will assist and complete disaster assistance claiming and will be fully offset with federal and state reimbursements. The second position is to add the second deputy sheriff assigned to Riverstone as per the development agreement triggers. This FTE will be fully offset through a combination of tax increment from Riverstone and direct developer funding. The third position is to add a deputy sheriff in the civil division to be assigned as a homelessness liaison. This position will specialize in addressing the specific homeless encampment issues and partnering with community partners and other stakeholders. The cost of this proposed position will be 100% discretionary revenues. Patrick Majeski, Madera County Undersheriff, is available for any questions.
Any questions? Supervisor Rogers?
I just want to say that the two departments we just covered, the DA and sheriffs, we can't afford to get these wrong at all. These are the tip of the spear, as I've said before. They're the tip of the spear in law enforcement, all of our law enforcement, public safety areas. The money's well spent. You guys do a great job. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
That was a statement.
That was any other statements? All right, thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the Department of Corrections budget, which begins on page 149 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $19,101,034 represent an increase of $854,451 over the previous fiscal year, primarily due to the cost of recommended staff. The department now includes the newly added position of Assistant Sheriff based on the board-approved action on April 6, 2021. This budget has 122 allocated positions, of which reflect no change from the previous fiscal year.
Very good. Oh, I'm sorry.
Manuel Perez, Assistant Director of Corrections, is available for any questions.
We have to go back to board minutes to figure out what it was. Yeah.
Very good. Any questions?
Are you going to change much this year when we start doing that conversion? Guess you can both answer that.
In
Huh?
regards to what type of change?
when the sheriff's taking over the jail.
No, there should not be any change.
Okay.
The only change is increasing the services with some of the units, collaboration, working together. I think we're going to be more effective as one department versus two departments, if that's the question you're asking.
And that's what I thought it'd be better in, but I know it's going to be a little bit of a cost because we're going to put another department head in there. I mean, a deputy there to help you and help run it more efficiently. So, yeah, so should, I think, much better.
Yeah, there shouldn't be much any more change other than what we've already added with the assistant sheriff.
You did, right. You gave us a great program. I don't know if the people do it public, but they should know what we're doing.
Supervisor Rogers.
Yeah, Chief, back in 2011, when I first came on, you and I sat in my office and talked about how we might utilize A87 money from subvented departments that apply. They're actually reasonable, and I know you've been doing that. I want you to be sure and inform the sheriff as they take control of this and move to a future that we understand the need to apply those dollars where they need to be to offset the cost to the general fund. And it's legitimate. It's not something we're shopping for, but where it's applicable, we need to find those dollars.
Absolutely. I do want to assure the board that the recent relationship that we've had with undersheriff, the sheriff, and the team has been really outstanding.
Good.
It really has been. And I know we don't get out here and share with you what we're doing on a daily basis. And it truly is now one department. So the collaboration and relationship we've established has been really outstanding.
Excellent.
And the staff in the jail divisions, we'll refer to it now, there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of excitement because we see ourselves with an organization that's larger, but because now we'll be able to provide more services and work with each other. So we are looking forward to assisting the sheriff's department as vice versa, them working closely with us inside the facility.
Yeah. And that wasn't a new relationship. I mean, you could see there was always that collaboration before, which is why doing something that would have been like in other areas or like a very, very heavy lift that was done and seemingly very light lift because of the relationships that you already had and the collaboration that had gone on long before. And that's just a testament to your leadership as well as the leadership in the sheriff's office. And so, it was a big deal to be able to do something like this and everybody like come out happy. I mean, it was, I feel like one of the coolest things I've seen ever. And
the only thing I would add is there was sort of like an unspoken barrier, which we were able to knock that barrier down.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing now.
Mr. Varney.
I just wanted to add that there is an actual committee of corrections personnel and sheriff's office personnel that continue to work on that transition. And outside of the leadership things that you've already mentioned, that's why that's going so smoothly.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions, comments, statements? Thank you.
The next group of departmental budgets for your consideration is the probation department budgets, which begins with the juvenile hall budget found on page 163 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $20,202,480 represent a decrease of $560,632 over the previous fiscal year. The department's proposed budget has 133 allocated positions, of which 16 are currently unfunded. Chris Childers, County Probation Officer, is available for any questions.
Any questions? Good morning, Chief Childers.
It's great in the first year, taking it down over $500,000. I mean, great leadership.
We can thank the state legislatures for reducing fees for criminal convictions.
Isn't that wonderful?
Both juveniles and adults.
Yeah, that's
Turn them
great.
loose.
There you go. All right, well, there's no other comments, questions, statements? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
The next set of budgets for your consideration are the fire department budgets, which begin on page 209 of the budget book. The fire department has 4 separate budget orgs, which include the main county fire department budget, Station 8, Riverstone, and Tercero Viejo. There are a total of 6 positions allocated to this budget, which provide accounting and office support and heavy mechanic support for the county firefighters. The main county fire department budget include the funding for all county fire stations, including those stations in the Amador plan. The total recommended budget for the fire departments is $11,766,353, which is an increase of $1,321,082 from the current fiscal year. Matt Watson, CAL FIRE Chief, is available for any questions.
Very good. Any questions?
Yeah, I got one.
Okay.
Tom, can you please speak into your mic? I'm deaf in this ear,
Yeah,
can't hear
put
on
that
this
over
one.
here. Is that better? Yeah. Trying to find Chickchansey. I made this note last night that for the Chickchansey Fire Station up there that we partner with them. Here it is, right here. It says that 01370 number on the left of the budget page. It's on page 15, XB maneuver number. It cost us $780,000 for that station. Is that they pay for everything else but the 780?
No, the 780 is part of the admin fee that's charged, so that station is fully covered by the casino, and the admin fee covers the associated budget with that. And during our negotiations with Chickchansey and the MOU, is we provided them the documentation of that
Right.
admin fee charged by the county, and that covers these
Then
services.
Joel, why does that have 780,000 on it?
So, Chief Watson, I think the supervisor is asking about the 700,000 increase, which is related to, I think, the contract.
So the increase, Supervisor, thank you, Joel, for clarification. Supervisor Wheeler, that increase is due to the proposed negotiations for the upcoming MOU with Chickchansey Tribe.
Oh, so that's what that's.
It's additional bodies.
You're correct. That's the additional
But they will
positions that
pay
were.
for that.
Correct.
Okay. Is there any way we can put a note on there or something, or is it covered someplace else? Or it's still
Supervisor,
like that?
on page 225, we kind of sum up there what the net county cost is for the increase. So at the bottom,
And it shows what they're.
0
they
net
paid
county
us?
cost, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's,
I seen that on this, I was just doing this summary that you guys gave us, you know.
right, so
And that's where I got a lot of my questions on that. Maybe
I think maybe in the future, we would add.
If I had to go every one of these on every one of those, and so if I got questions on some of these, maybe I'll slow you down a little bit. I mean, doing a
I think
great job.
Supervisor, maybe in the future version of this appropriation sheet, we will include the net county cost change. So that way you can, if you want to look at all orgs and what's impact and discretionary, you can see it in here.
Right, instead of seeing that 780,000 there, thinking that
Right.
that's increased and they're not paying it.
The 737, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Correct. And the remainder of the increases are for the additional, either through the development agreements, adding the staffing, or looking at adding staffing to the Station 3 when it opens, the new fire station number 3. And then Station 19, adding a second person a day, which that'll now cover all the current staff stations for the county, having at least a minimum 2 people on duty a day.
Perfect. That's really good. If we could do that every once in a while, it adds our money, but safety is number one for us.
Right. And just to, add to Matt's point, because of the timing of Station 3, the FTE for Station 3 is not in here, even though it's in the CAL FIRE agreement. In the CAO approved version of the fire department budget, we took it out because we don't expect it to be filled until Station 3 is completed.
And that projected open day will be next fiscal year. So that's the discussion we had, was to remove those from this, but not out of the CAL FIRE agreement.
I see.
Okay, any other questions for Matt? Seeing none, thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Supervisors, for your support.
The next budget for your consideration is the Agricultural Commissioner's budget, which includes the budget for predatory animal control and begins on page 235 of the budget book. The total recommended budget of $2,097,657 represent an increase of $86,584 from the current fiscal year. This budget has 18 allocated positions, of which 3 are unfunded, and reflects the same number of total allocated positions as the prior year. Rusty Landsberger, Ag Commissioner, is available for any questions.
All right, very good. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Rusty.
The next budget for your consideration is the Community and Economic Development Planning Division budget, which begins on page 245. The recommended budget for the Planning Division is $4,030,953, which represents a $670,117 increase over the current fiscal year, and is primarily due to an increase in professional services for contracts with consultants for grants and special projects. The department has 17 allocated positions, of which 3 are currently unfunded. The next budget for your consideration is the Community and Economic Development Building and Fire Safety Division budget, which begins on page 255. The recommended budget for the Building and Fire Safety Division is $3,588,867, which represents a $780,370 increase over the current fiscal year, and is primarily due to the cost of recommended staff. The department has 27 allocated positions, which is an increase of 6 positions from the current fiscal year. Matt Treber, Chief of Development Services, is available for any questions on these 2 budgets.
Supervisor Gonzalez.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick question on your growth, and do you have storage capacity, or how are you addressing that?
Thank you, Supervisor. Good question. We are working to get pretty creative on the 3rd floor for space needs, analysis, and expansion of that. So we should be good for at least this fiscal year, and we'll be working certainly with General Services and Administration on any future needs here as we see if the trend progresses that we see in development and activity. I will tell you, I just have a couple of brief things. So I went back and we pulled 2009 permit history to show where we were at our previous height, and we issued 83 single-family dwelling permits in 2009.
What year?
For the year. As of the first 6 months in 2021, we have issued 427 single-family dwelling permits just in the first 6 months of this year. Last year for the whole total was 583. So, from the previous height of staffing levels, we have a 500 permit increase, and we're on pace to hit 800, 900 permits this year. Overall, total permit activity taken in the whole of 2009 was just over 2,200 total permits for 2009. Again, the first 6 months of 2021, we are at 2,800, just over 2,800 total permits. So we've already eclipsed by more than 500 that. So again, last year was 4,300 permits. Again, with first 6 months, we're already at 2,800 permits. So that's all to be said that we have seen a significant increase in permit activity. And yes, we are getting into a bit of a space allocation issue on the 3rd floor there, but we have additional room to grow, and we'll be, again, like I said, working with administration, General Services on any needs moving forward with that. So.
Thank you.
One on that last year's 583, and this year so far you got how many permits?
427. That's just single-family dwelling permits.
Single family up to right now.
Yes. Yeah, the first 6 months of the year.
Very good. Any other questions, comments? If not, thank you.
Thank you to the board and staff.
I was kind of waiting for a thank you from the board to District 1, but it's okay.
It's Madera.
Thanks for growing out there, buddy.
The next set of budgets for your consideration is the County GSA's budget, which begins on page 265 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $4,143,546 represent a $539,546 increase over the current fiscal year, primarily due to the cost of recommended staff. The department has 10 allocated positions, of which all are funded. The next budget for your consideration is the Flood Control Services Fund, which begins on page 271 of the budget book. This budget is not a part of the general fund and is a separate enterprise fund. It provides funding for flood system repair and other grant-funded projects. The recommended expenditures of $1,398,246 represent a decrease of $1,987,004 from the previous fiscal year, primarily due to a decrease in professional and specialized services. Stephanie Agneson, Director of Water and Natural Resources, is available for any comments or questions your board has on the county GSAs and/or flood control budgets.
Very good. Any questions of Stephanie before tomorrow?
Yeah.
So this, it's through interfund. During this year, will we be looking to do the 218 to create that revenue stream to be able to do any enforcement of tomorrow's issue?
Yes.
You're ready for tomorrow?
I'm as ready as I can be. I hope we're all ready for tomorrow.
We better be.
There you go.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that we have a plan for funding through this year.
We do. We have the GSA admin fee that is going in the interfund revenue for this year, and that would include enforcement.
Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you, Stephanie.
And I would imagine there'll be some fines that will end up coming into that revenue stream as well.
Yeah.
The next budget for your consideration is the Local Agency Formation Commission budget, which begins on page 277 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $12,944 represent a $25,723 decrease over the current fiscal year. This decrease is attributed to anticipated carryover funds from the current fiscal year. We are available for any questions.
Who's available? I don't see Dave.
CAO staff.
All right. Any questions, comments?
I think the LAFCO commission ought to be thanked for doing such a great job of, keep it.
Exactly. Great job, Chairman. Very good. Well, thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the Animal Services budget, which begins on page 279 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $1,440,046 represent a $12,008 increase over the current fiscal year. This budget has 17 allocated positions, the same as the current fiscal year. Cindy Avila, Animal Services Director, is available for any questions.
Any questions of Cindy?
Yeah, I seen in the preview of it that we were really down on licensing last year. And I thought maybe with all the people getting so many animals and everything else, that's what they talked about, that we'd have more, but I guess they're not.
Well, we're working on it.
Take that off for me, please, while you talk.
Okay, sorry.
I can't hear this one. This one deaf and mumbles.
Yeah, no, we are working on it, and with the adding of DocuPet, we're actually increasing every month. So we will get there.
Back up.
Yes.
And
I think with COVID and everybody was kind of unemployment, and we probably lost a little bit, but we will rebound.
I figured that's probably what it was. Also, maybe not today. I mean, sometime, can you give me a percentage of what we do in the city compared to the rest of the county or area?
Yes. As far as all we do with the city is we take in their animals.
Right.
During COVID, the city has been bringing in an average of more animals than the county. I can go back and get you the exact numbers. Yeah.
So you've been here a long time. You probably know more than any of us, but.
Yes. I mean, since COVID, they've definitely been bringing in more.
Supervisor Frazier.
Oh, no, that was from a long time ago.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's 6 or 7 items ago.
Thank you. I think you're doing a great job, and I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you.
It's not an easy job, but we're not doing no killing out either, right?
No, very, very, very little. Only vicious.
It's bad or something, right? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you. Okay.
The next budget for your consideration is the Fish and Game Fines budget, which begins on page 285 of the budget book.
Recommended expenditures of 5,000 remains unchanged from the current fiscal year. This is not a general fund budget. CAO staff are available for any questions.
All right. Hearing none.
The next budget for your consideration is the trial court operations budget, which begins on page 287 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $1,311,128 remains the same as the current fiscal year. This budget represents the county's historical share of annual operation and maintenance costs for each court facility that was transferred to state control in 2007. CAO staff are available for any questions on this budget.
Thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the grand jury budget, which begins on page 291 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $78,640 remain is the same as the current fiscal year. CAO staff are available for any questions. The next budget for your consideration is the public defender budget, which begins on page 295 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $3,951,584 reflect an increase of $115,620 over the current fiscal year. The increase reflects the negotiated agreement cost with the contracted public defender for the 21-22 budget year. We are available for any questions on this budget.
That's what I noticed in the front part of this, that theirs has already gone up, and yet we have, Charlie said we have more crime, but don't show it on this, so that was my point. Right?
All right, very good. I propose that we take about an 8 or 9 minute break and
That's
come
really
back
good.
at 5 after 11. How's that?
Thank you. Thank you, boss.
Right. Let's go ahead and move on. I guess you'll be working on the Board of Supervisors, starting off with that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The next budget for your consideration is the Board of Supervisors budget, which begins on page 299 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $1,904,508 reflect a net increase of $2,232 over the current fiscal year. There is no recommended increase in funded positions for this budget. We are available for any questions.
We save money.
Yes, considering all the retirement increase, that is tantamount to saving money.
Okay.
Okay. The next budget for your consideration is the administrative management budget, which begins on page 307 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $1,081,204 reflect an increase of $26,866 over the current fiscal year, which reflects actual salary and benefit costs based on current rates. There is no increase in funded positions recommended for this budget. However, the CAO is recommending that your board conceptually approve the addition of an assistant county administrative officer to the position allocation as an unfunded position. The CAO's intent is to return to your board with the necessary actions to formally create and fund this position at a future fiscal year, as it will likely take several fiscal years to stabilize the county's finances. Under authority of the CAO, the proposed assistant CAO position will assist the CAO in coordinating the county's day-to-day operations with department heads and will oversee all admin office functions, which currently include the 311 Customer Service Center, county purchasing, risk management, strategic planning, county budget, grant services, fleet services, capital projects and acquisitions, and general services. Prior to 2010-11, the admin office had a chief assistant CAO to oversaw 2 assistant CAOs, which is roughly equivalent to the proposed structure in which an assistant CAO will oversee 2 deputy CAOs. We feel that the eventual move to this structure is necessary given the increase in scope and oversight responsibilities the office has had since 2010-11, which includes the transfer of general services functions after dissolution of the RMA, the creation of the 311 call center, strategic planning, grant services, county leasing program, and capital projects, to name a few. Even if the assistant CAO is funded, administration will still be 2 FTEs below its pre-recession staffing levels, despite having added 4 FTEs to 311 services 4 years ago. However, this lack of resource capacity in admin, and to the same degree in general services, has led to important planning activities relating to capital project prioritization, infrastructure repair and maintenance, countywide internal service billing and control to be deprioritized in favor of crisis-based management and critical new programs and initiatives. In summary, The proposed assistant CAO is conceptual at this point and will remain unfunded if the budget is adopted in its current form. It is the intent to return at the future fiscal year with a more comprehensive presentation concerning the proposal once the county's finances are stable. CAO Varney and staff are available for any questions on this budget.
All right, thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the 311 customer service budget, which begins on page 313 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $335,805 reflect an increase of $31,803 over the current fiscal year based on current retirement and benefit rates. There are 4 funded positions in the budget and no increases recommended. We would like to note that due to COVID-19, the level of activities this exceptional group of folks has increased from an average call volume of 30,000 to 32,000 in 2020 and to 56,000 as of May of this year.
How much, 66?
56,000 as of May this year.
From 30, say those again.
From an average of 30,000 calls prior to COVID-19.
That's amazing. I just want to thank them. This was one of those things that I was so happy that we had during this time and how quickly they were able to pivot and go straight into that, get the training. I mean, they should really be commended for this past year and every year before that. But really during this time, I remember talking to other counties and them just saying, "You have what?"
I know.
It was, and I would hear from the governor's office that others were asking for funds to be able to have call centers set up, and we already had it. It was one of those special things where it all kind of came together. And that my only question is, did you want to take 2 pages out of the admin budget so that it could be on page 311? I mean, that's only, it was almost there. It was so close. Like,
We will make a point of that next year.
I would also like, along with Brett, to commend the 311, and I want to make special mention of Joseph Shudwan out front. He is the face of our county as you come in the building. So friendly, so effective. Proud of that guy. I'm proud of our whole team. They're all very friendly on the phone. You can hear their smile. I mean, that's how it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Right. The next budget for your consideration is the special payments budget, which begins on page 317 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $6,169,784 reflect an increase of $1,531,107 over the current fiscal year, primarily due to the full year cost of the Hall of Justice capitalized interest payment, which accounts for $1.3 million, and a 10% prepayment of the outstanding principal of the Oakhurst Government Center, which amounts to $336,960. Despite the increase, net county costs to discretionary sources reflect a decrease of $730,066, as impact fee revenue is used to offset debt service of projects identified in the county's capital improvement plan, which includes the partial prepayment of the outstanding debt for the Oakhurst Government Center. This budget also includes the county's annual contribution to the Madera County EDC, Visitors Bureau, and the San Joaquin Valley Water Infrastructure Authority, and the county's indigent cost payments to Madera Community Hospital. There are no allocated positions in this budget. CAO staff is available for any questions.
How much do we give the Visitor Bureau now?
It is recommend for fiscal year 21-22, it's the same level of $150,000 for proposed.
Oh, here it is. Okay. I wonder if we ought to relook at that. I mean, they're BID dollars now.
Right. So the current year actually did not come from discretionary revenues. We forwarded $150,000 of County CARES Act money because it's part of the purposes is for the reopening plan. We are also recommending to cover, because reopening is a long process, so we are recommending that 150 be out of the ARPA money, simply because we're still reopening. There's still things they have to do, and remarketing the county again, because we feel that the 150,000 will pay us dividends in hotel motel tax down the road.
Yeah, because they bring in a lot of money because they really do some great advertising.
Right. And they took a hit in BID too. So the same hit that we took in hotel motel, they took a hit in BID because it goes hand in hand.
So it kind of went.
Yeah.
It equaled out.
Right.
Okay.
Supervisor Frazier.
The San Joaquin Valley Water Infrastructure Authority, we're still.
Yeah, we're still active in that. They've decreased their function quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I believe the outlay is 15,000 a year.
12,500.
12,500. Somewhere
What
there.
were we doing before?
It was 50.
Yeah,
It's
it was
the number down.
50,000.
Okay. Yeah, I knew it. I just wanted to know where.
At
how
some
much it had
point,
gone down.
unless we actually see something developing from that, at one point the focus was Temperance Flat Dam.
Yeah, that's
That
gone.
money given from the state was a paltry, 200 million that could not even get close to the 3 billion. So that project is gone for now. But their focus is to support water infrastructure projects throughout the region as counties bring them forward.
Could that 200 million be used for capacity like canal building and?
It's actually gone back to the state under Prop 1, and it can be utilized for shovel-ready projects that meet the public benefit requirement.
Okay.
So, and they have to be large projects, so I think there's a limit on size.
Thank you.
Have to be big.
Very good. Thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the Health and Social Services Campus budget, which begins on page 323 of the budget book. This budget reflects the pass-through charges to public health and social services for the lease financing of the 4 health and social services buildings on the Road 28 campus. There are no positions associated, as it serves as purely for accounting purposes. CAO staff is available for any questions.
Thank you.
The next 3 budgets in the budget book reflect the 3 COVID-19 response budget orgs that were created in the early phases of the pandemic response. These budgets begin on page 325. There are no recommended appropriations for fiscal year 2021-22, as response efforts are now included within respective budgets of public health and various other departments whenever applicable. CAO staff is available for any questions.
Supervisor Gonzalez.
Yeah, just a quick question regarding the 3.6 million that we got for CARES funding. Are we going to have a presentation on how that helped the businesses or which businesses? I would just like to see a breakdown to see what worked, because if we're potentially going to use the 2.7 of the new funding coming in, I just kind of want to see what worked, what didn't, and including the breakdown on the
housing assistance.
The housing assistance.
That's an excellent point, Supervisor. We will make sure that when we bring back the 2.7, we are actually in the process of closing out the CARES funding. We have a report due first week of July. So we will use that information to provide an update on the CARES program.
Okay, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the legal and insurance budget, which begins on page 329 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $5,442,932 reflect an increase of $320,595 over the current fiscal year, primarily due to the rising cost of retiree health insurance and liability insurance premiums. There are 2 allocated positions in this budget. Both are funded and reflects no increase from the current fiscal year. Mayor McCandless, Deputy CAO for Legal and Risk, is available for any questions on this budget.
Any questions? Thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the County Council budget, which begins on page 337 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $1,552,550 reflect no increase from the current fiscal year. We are available for any questions on this budget.
Great job keeping it where it should be. I think we're getting great service, and yeah, I'm proud of this budget.
Thank you.
And I remember when you were really concerned a couple of years ago about this.
Because it started at 170, and then it went to 340, and then it went to, and so I said, what is the actual number? And we got to the actual number, and I think we get, I just thank Regina and for keeping an eye on that, and I see now if one will leave and go do something else, so that it's not, it's a very good system now. Really appreciate it.
Really good.
Thank you. Right. The next set of budgets for your consideration are the Human Resources and Public Information Team budgets, which begins on page 341 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $2,383,445 reflect an increase of $770,217 over the current fiscal year due to the proposed implementation of and consolidation of disability compliance and investigation functions from the other departments. The recommended increase will be fully offset with subvented funding from departments, thereby reflecting no change in the net county cost for HR operations over a one-year period. The recommended expenditures for the Public Information Team remain at $10,000, which is no increase from the current fiscal year. Elba Gomez, Director of Human Resources, is available for any questions.
Elba, when you take this from other departments, these positions or work, what happens to those people that's working in those other departments?
So what we're doing is actually assisting the departments in being able to provide the services that they need to provide. So instead of having supervisors focus on doing interactive processes for medical disabilities or trying to do investigations on for themselves with discipline, that work is coming back to our office, and they will be able to focus on the work that they need to be doing. So, for example, behavioral health. A supervisor can focus on the goals of the department to help the community instead of trying to figure out how to do an investigation for a disciplinary purpose that should really be done in our department. So that's really, a lot of the departments
So
are.
those persons have something else they can do in that department?
Yes.
And so they still got to do their investigation there, then give it to you, and then you take it over?
We're taking over the investigations.
What happened? They just tell you, Tom
Right.
Leader is screwing over this money, and you got to take care of it.
So for example, sexual harassment, we have a policy specifically says that the investigation should be coming over to HR, or the department needs to be making HR aware. So we're really trying to enforce that part of it to ensure that HR is aware of any items that are going on in the department, and we'll have a specialized person that can be doing that work. The other areas that we're trying.
How did you do it before then?
The department was doing it themselves, and it was taking a very long time.
Then they'd give it to you?
Yeah. And then we were revising it, going back and forth with the departments and making changes. And there's times where some investigations take about 6 months to do, where they could have taken maybe 3 or 4 weeks to complete.
This way you can make it more efficient. And
Yes, correct.
Take care of the harasser, and.
Yes. The other area supervisor that we're really trying to focus on is recruitment and selection. There's a lot of need from public health, behavioral health, as well as the sheriff's office because of how fast they're growing. And we had an extra help employee that left earlier in the year. And so it really did impact the work that they were doing. And that position is now being added as requested as a permanent position. And behavioral health and public health are also funding a senior HR technician, which really kind of focuses and shifts that work so they can get the help they need. And then we can also have this other analyst help the sheriff's department and probation because they have constant turnover. And so right now there's a backlog of recruitments because of how much they need for recruitment.
So sheriff is having a lot of turnover?
They
I didn't
have,
think they were having as much
they
now.
constantly have deputies. There's turnover, people leave, and we have to continue to
Any
fill.
more than regular?
Yeah, there's been some changes, corrections, for example, always has a high
Corrections, I
turnover.
can see.
Yeah,
Sheriff, I didn't think it was
Yeah.
having that. Then these analysts that you're talking about, what do they do?
what was that again?
The analysts, is that what these are, these positions?
Yes, so the HR analyst
That's
wants,
their official title?
yes.
Okay, that's all.
Okay, anything else? All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
The next budgets for your consideration are the general services budgets, which begin on page 353 of the budget book and contain 5 budget orgs, beginning with General Services Administration. Recommended expenditures for General Services Administration is $556,296, which reflects a $215,901 increase over the current fiscal year due to the proposed addition of a new facility superintendent and the funding of a currently unfunded administrative analyst position which is offset by reduction in extra help costs, extra help general service manager costs in the main budget of administration. The funding of an unfunded analyst is fully offset with that, like I mentioned, the retirement of an extra help general service manager. The proposed new facility superintendent classification is proposed to oversee both the building maintenance and grounds maintenance functions of general services, focusing on developing, planning, implementing systematic programs for the maintenance repair of all county facilities within prescribed budget limitations, and will be responsible for recommending and implementing policies and procedures necessary for the safe and efficient operation of county facilities. The other 4 general services budgets include building operations, building maintenance, grounds maintenance, and utilities. Recommended expenditures for building operations of $686,240 reflect the contracted cost for janitorial services for county facilities. Recommended expenditures for building maintenance of $1,722,425 reflect an increase of $132,436, primarily due to the preventive maintenance contracts for HVAC, fire systems, and county jail gate maintenance and elevator maintenance. This budget also reflects the cost of a full-time building maintenance worker funded by social services that was previously covered through extra help. Recommended expenditures for grounds maintenance of $565,922 reflect an increase of $21,647 and is based on the updated retirement and benefit rates. This budget reflects status quo staffing levels. And finally, recommended expenditures for utilities of $970,540 reflect an increase of $137,943 solely based on the updated PG&E rates and the addition of the Oakhurst Government Center utilities. It is anticipated, however, that this increase will be offset once construction of the Road 28 solar expansion is completed later this fiscal year. With that, CNO and General Services staff are available for any questions.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Joel, how many county buildings do we have total?
I apologize, I don't know that offhand, but we'll get someone to give that information at the end of the day.
Thank you.
Supervisor Frazier?
Have we realized that decrease in the amount of times that we would have to come out and clean off all the bird?
I think definitely we have. I think
because we were doing it, what, 4 times a year?
4 times. I think we're doing it twice, if that. And I mean, both anecdotally too, going in and out of the parking garage.
Oh, you can see it. You can see a huge difference. Yeah.
It's a big difference.
I just wanted to see if we were actually, because I haven't seen them out, but that doesn't mean that they weren't there. But just wanted to see if we were not having to do the 4 times a year.
Right. I don't believe we're doing 4. I think we've gone down to 2.
Awesome. Yeah. And then you can see, I mean, there's not a huge increase in here. So that's great.
Right. Every now and then we'll get one, yeah.
I'm here. Sorry, Maria Castro, General Services Manager. I'm here. Sorry, I was having technical difficulties. So Supervisor Gonzalez, to answer your question, we have a little more than 80 facilities across the county.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then do you know how many times yeah.
And currently we're budgeting 2 cleanings a year. We budget for that and then do them as needed. So what we've been lucky with all of the preventative measures we took is we don't have to do the exterior of the buildings anymore. We would have to do all of the windows and power wash the exterior of the buildings, both parking garage and the government center, and we no longer have to do that. So we just do the regular window cleaning twice a year.
Great.
Okay, any other questions?
Something I wanted to ask, I found it in the dollars, but go ahead and go, I can't find it, so.
Okay. Move on to the auditor
All right.
controller.
The next budget for your consideration is the auditor controller budget, which begins on page 375 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $2,664,116 reflect an increase of $14,746 over the current fiscal year based on updated retirement and benefit rates. There are 20 funded positions in this budget with no increase recommended for the budget year. Eileen Christensen, Assistant Auditor Controller, is available for any questions.
Thank you.
The next budget for your consideration are the assessor budgets, which begins on page 381 of the budget. There are 2 budget orgs for the assessor's main budget and the GIS layer redraw. Recommended expenditures for the assessor's main budget of $2,636,475 reflect an increase of $218,095 over the current fiscal year based on updated retirement benefit rates and the projected cost of anticipated step increases during the fiscal year. There are 24 funded positions in this budget, which reflects no increase over the current fiscal year. Recommended expenditures for the assessor's GIS layer redraw of $620,000 is a $630,000 decrease from the current fiscal year based on the projected professional services cost to develop a new GIS layer map. These expenditures are funded with state grant funds at a 2-to-1 ratio, with the matching funds allocated by your board in the current fiscal year, with 50% of the match coming from the general fund and 50% of the match coming from the Community Economic Development's Technology Fund. Harry Savannah, County Assessor, is available for any questions.
How we doing?
All right, very good, thank you.
Right. The next budgets for your consideration are the tax collector and treasurer budgets, which begins on page 393 of the budget book. Total recommended expenditures of $2,358,587 for both the tax collector and the treasurer budget orgs reflect an increase of $76,887 over the current fiscal year based on updated retirement and benefit rates. There are 16 funded positions in this budget, which reflect the same level as the current fiscal year. Tracy Kennedy, Treasurer Tax Collector, is available for any questions.
Hey, I don't hear any questions, so.
Our treasurer tax collector. Our treasurer tax collector. Don't you always say
Yeah,
your?
she didn't say it, did she? Now she's messing up.
And the next budgets for your consideration are the clerk recorder and elections budgets, which begin on page 415 of the budget book. Total recommended expenditures of $2,633,517 reflect an increase of $98,681 over the current fiscal year due to updated retirement and benefit rates. There are a total of 17 funded positions in the budget. No increases are proposed. Becky Martinez, County Clerk Recorder and Registrar of Voters, is available for any questions.
Right. Very good. Thank
The
you.
next budget for your consideration is the mailroom budget, which begins on page 429 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $361,068 reflect a decrease of $228,498 from the current fiscal year due to the shift of the megabyte software agreement to the IT budget. In addition, to better align and supervise mailroom activities, oversight of this budget will be shifted to the clerk recorder effective July 1st. The provision of staff has actually shifted during the current fiscal year to better align oversight of the functions and allow for mailroom and other staff in the clerk recorder to be cross-trained for backup purposes. There is one funded position in this budget. No additional positions are proposed. Becky Martinez, County Clerk Recorder and Registrar of Voters, is available for any questions.
Yes, Supervisor Gonzalez.
Yeah, just real quick as well. And I had tabbed the clerk recorder's budget off because of the same question regarding planning and the third floor about your space needs. I was just curious as to if that's going to be if you're going to have to address that anytime soon, because you guys are very busy with the special elections and the upcoming elections. So I was just curious as to your space needs, if they're being met.
Morning.
Morning. So, yeah, we took over the mailroom. That's been fun. I think that space is something that we're all going to need going forward. There's no place for us to grow, right? The third floor had originally been planned for growth, but then once planning and those other departments when those departments moved into the third floor, then that took away any opportunity for growth. But in addition to that, we don't have storage. Storage is a huge issue. So right now I'm using what used to be the old mailroom, which is the trailer that's over here where the courts building used to be. Now, if we ever level that property, then we won't have a place to store those records. But those are old historical land records, and we cannot get rid of them.
Supervisor, so if I may add, I think this is the second question, second type of space issue. I want to add, and it's related to this, part of the proposed structure and general services and the new facility superintendent is that these are the kinds of planning things that we're missing right now. Becky, but it's not just Becky and it's not just, CED. There are other departments that have space needs, both in storage and growth. And that's part of the capability that we wanted to build in general services, because we need to be forward-looking and anticipate these things, so that way we can come up with a good proposal to the board on how to address that long-term.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And like I said, it's I just wanted to make sure that we put it out there. Thank you.
Can I mention one thing, since we're talking about money and things of that sort right now? Clerk recorder department has been really busy, recording documents and things of that sort. That is another function of mine. At the end of, or the beginning of June, we brought in $2.2 million in just recordings and transfer tax. We estimate that by the end of the fiscal year, that number will grow to 2.4, which is $744,000 more than we anticipated to bring in for this fiscal year. So irregardless of the pandemic, we've been recording, people are buying homes, and of course, paying transfer tax. We like it. Thank you.
So when we shut down tore down the old jail and stuff here, we had a bunch of records in there we had to move too, right?
Correct.
So-
And they're climate-controlled records, so there's very specific needs.
And these are records that they have to be.
You have to keep them, right?
We have to keep them.
You can't video and what do you call it?
No, because they're old. They're the old books that they used to write in with those quill pens. We could probably do something to download the data somehow by taking images of those pages.
Yeah.
The problem is you would have to figure out a way to also preserve the record, the book itself,
Yeah.
in so doing. And if you do, you still have to have storage for them.
Yeah, maybe, we tore that all down, maybe that'd be a good place to build a building. It's close here and it's gotta be air conditioned right and heated right, because you can't just put those stuff in a.
Supervisor, that's an excellent point to make. I think part of the priorities for fiscal year 21-22 for our general services, and it's already, because they have gotten this request and it's put on their radar.
She's talked to me for 5 years about it.
Right. So,
When we
and I
moved
think
everything out of up there.
Anybody who
third floor.
listened. Oh.
right. So the intent is for our general services in 21-22 to have that needs, to take note of all those needs and to figure out how do we meet all of those needs in terms of space, right? Because we need to take stock of what we have and what we could have, what we could afford, right? And then basically what are the most pressing needs from departments. The process that general service wants to mirror is most related to the IT steering committee process, where IT projects are proposed, vetted, and then costed out and prioritized based on priority. We need a similar process for facilities, and that's the process they're trying to get to, and that's a priority for them for this fiscal year.
Are we still renting buildings that you got stuff stored in?
I'm sorry?
Are we still renting buildings where you got stuff stored in?
We're not renting any buildings. We moved them from the building that we were leasing, and now we're in that mailroom.
Right.
But it's just a matter of time before somebody's going to want to level that property, and then I'll be back where I was, trying to lease property
Right.
for that
Yeah, and
function.
I think it'd be nice to have a thing off-site where that stuff was, do it. So I think we ought to put that as one of our priority lists.
It definitely will be considered, yes.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yeah, if that's not something we're accessing continually, decentralizing it is probably the best option, and maybe do a countywide search for something that we already have, potentially. 80 different properties, we got to have something somewhere.
All right. Mr. Varney?
I was just going to suggest when it becomes time for the Hall of Justice to be occupied and this collection of buildings next door to not be occupied anymore, the board may wish to divide that piece so that there is a portion over there that has permanent storage on it, perhaps for more than one department. And that's, again, going back to what Joel said, that would be one of the things that we would get the department heads together to get their needs and then cost it out. And, I don't want to say I want to wait 2 years, but you have almost 2 years before the HOJ will be occupied. So we will continue to work on a plan. I think some of those records I don't want to speak for Rebecca, but they probably need to be here so that staff can get to them, because the people are going to come to this office to get their copies to get verification. So there may be some other things we can move to an off-site location, but some of the things for the clerk recorder or the treasurer, or those kind of things that people are going to be here in this building wanting copies, we should keep
Even in
close by.
planning, probably.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next budgets for your consideration are the information technology budgets, which begin on page 435 of the budget book. IT consists of 4 general fund budgets, beginning with the IT main budget. Recommend expenditure of $6,798,899 for the IT main budget, reflect an increase of $526,594, primarily due to the shift of the megabyte maintenance agreement from the mailroom budget, which amounts to $235,000, so half of that amount. And the other half is due to updated retirement and health benefit rates. Recommended expenditures of $418,748 for the IT One Solution budget reflects an increase of $40,333 due to the cost of implementing the One Solution upgrade and its interface with NeoGov. Recommended expenditures of $2,029,503 for the IT Information Security budget reflect an increase of $205,579 over the current fiscal year due to the updated retirement and health benefit rates and the projected cost of hardware and software related to security. And finally, recommended expenditures of $685,124 for the IT Voice over Internet Protocol, shorthand VoIP phone system, reflect an increase of $135,033 due to the cost of providing VoIP phone service to the departments in the phase 2 of implementation in the government center. IT has 28 funded positions across all of its budget orgs, and there is no increase proposed for the budget year. Tanya Say, Chief Information Officer, is available for any questions.
Is there money in there to finish what we got to do up at the Oakhurst Government Center?
Supervisor, I'm going to let Tanya, defer to Tanya for that question.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tanya Say, Chief Information Officer. The structure, the actual hardware that's going to be provided up at the Oakhurst Government Center is in the building budget. However, in our budget in this next year, there's going to be, we did put in for the cost of the service, the internet service to that facility. So
that's
$27,000 is in there for the actual network connection.
And it was that connection to hook up with the courts too?
No, I do not believe the courts were, I'm sorry.
Well, they were supposed to have it so we can have those video hearings in there.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question at first. It's the internet connection, so it's the service provider that will be paying for the actual network connection. In terms of hooking up with the courts, that's another discussion. I think that's included in the hardware costs that were submitted to the building budget.
So I don't know the specific answer of whether there is funds in the capital project. Your board appropriated that in fiscal year 21-22, and I believe that covers that portion of the project. I don't know specifically if that covers the courts, but we can get back to you on that one.
I was just wondering because we've been talking about it for 2 years, so I'm just, somebody said we've been talking to the courts too, what they needed and stuff, and so just got to make sure that we're not, already been long enough, so we just keep postponing this and just once in a while, people remind me that, hey, when are we going to be able to have those little kind of hearings up there?
Right, so we'll bring you an update in regards to the portion of the courts in the Oakhurst Government Center.
Yeah, we're making payments in that building, we got everything set in there, and it's being unused. So.
Mr. Varney?
I think Joel answered the question related to the budget, but Supervisor Wheeler, I have directed Maritza to communicate directly with you on a weekly basis about the status of the overall government center. So if you aren't getting those emails, let me know and I'll, okay.
I appreciate that. So I can keep the people there apprised of what's happening.
Supervisor Wheeler, if I may.
Hi.
And just quickly, I know that there's been some negotiations going on. There's a tentative, a proposed anyways, rental kind of lease arrangement with the court, and I think that's still in negotiations.
Oh, okay. Could you update me on that too when you can? And keep me
Yes.
updated whatever you do when you meet with them. I'd appreciate it.
Yes, will do.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya.
All right, the next budgets for your consideration are the Public Works budgets, which begins with Public Works main budget on page 465 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $4,581,641 reflect a decrease of $4,152 from the current fiscal year, primarily due to the shift of positions to the refuse disposal budget to better align duties with functions. Recommended expenditures of $3,785,115 for the Special Districts Administration budget reflect an increase of $400,260, primarily due to the addition of 2 licensed operators to accommodate the addition of CSA 22C sewer treatment plant. Recommended expenditures of $31,572,533 for the Roads and Bridges budget reflect a decrease of $11,801,706 from the current fiscal year and reflects the total proposed project cost of bridge and roads replacement projects for the budget year. Recommended expenditures of $19,424,843 for the SB1 Road and Bridges budget reflect an increase of $10,735,966, which reflects the projected cost of bridge and road projects funded through SB1 for the budget year. And finally, recommended expenditures of $4,118,653 for the road transit budget reflect a decrease of $270,322 and reflects the projected cost of capital equipment replacement scheduled for the budget year. There are a total of 132 funded positions in this department, which reflect a net increase of 4 positions over the current fiscal year and includes the 2 positions to cover the CSA 22C sewer treatment plant and 2 positions in the main budget to address billing processes for solid waste, debt service for maintenance districts, and address activity related to the growth in the Rio Mesa area. Matt Schreiber, Chief of Development Services, is available for any questions.
And does that cover the, if we do that mandatory garbage hauling, if we get stuck with that, is that going to cover those people that's going to be doing that now, billing and everything, since we got to take that over?
Good question, Supervisor Wheeler. Matt Schreiber, Chief of Development Services. I also have Doug Wilson, our County Road Commissioner, and Andrea Saldati, our Deputy Public Works Director. So yes, the purpose for those, and you will see that they will remain unfunded until such time as that, well, not unfunded, I apologize, unfilled, right, until we have that position. Yeah, till we land somewhere on that, right? Obviously, the budgets were prepared prior to the previous board actions on that, but we'll be working through those situations.
And somewhere's in here, I've seen that our road dollars revenue, I believe it was in, looking here, notes that we had a big jump in our road revenue dollars. That, if I, here,
Is that road impact fees as well as SB1?
yeah, it was something, it was like, it went from 50 million to something to, bear with me.
Is that possibly related to budgeting SB1 in a separate budget that shifted?
Yeah, we did have some cleanup and moved the SB1 to its individual independent budget. And, you know, you've seen there's some big numbers that fluctuated from previous years.
Right.
As far as budgeted expenses, we had a large project that was budgeted in the previous fiscal year, Midtown Connector, that has made up some of that. A lot of our SB1 projects are also moving through the shop right now, and invoice payments and those things will be coming through.
That ring a bell, Andrea, or Mr. Wilson?
Yes, so everything Matt said is correct. The reason why the roads budget ebbs and flows throughout the different years is because of slated projects and then revenue increases and decreases because of such. The one thing that stays stagnant essentially is all of our state tax money that comes in, and that's just for your basic road maintenance.
Okay, and then, I know this, probably, I don't know if this has, the state off-highway vehicle dollars has jumped up to 300,000. Jay, that's on your summary. That, it's not for roads, is it? Is that for something on page 22 of the front part?
The Roman numeral,
Of the revenue.
revenue summary.
Who's talking? Oh. 21, it was 200,000, and 10 months so far, we got 25,000 recommended by Jay or Joe, 300,000. 654064, if that would help.
What was that number one more time, Supervisor? 65, just trying to look for it here.
654077. No, 654064. So close together. 064. State. There we go. Eddie's got the thing here. Yeah. 654064.
So Supervisor, offhand, we don't know which budget org that's coming from, but we can look up that information for you. It's in the overall revenue summary.
Yeah.
So we'll find out what department.
That's why I've seen that on the roads too, and why I can't find that right now. It just pisses me off.
Supervisor, if I may, so we'll dig up which orgs those, because sometimes the same revenue account is used in multiple orgs, and we just roll them up here. So I can't tell offhand. But the explanation should be in the individual budget orgs. Because this is a roll-up, it may be from more than one operation.
Okay.
Just using the same account. So we'll get that answer for you before the end of the day.
Okay. So our overall budget for roads then, back to that, is it up more than regular, or is it just catching up with the dollars that we hadn't gotten for those different projects?
So the money that we get from the state for road maintenance is actually decreasing a little bit. So the stuff that stays stagnant is decreasing a little bit. The reason why the budget looks smaller this year is because a lot of the construction that was slated in this fiscal year is coming to completion. And so it's just kind of remnants that will be finished in the next fiscal year. Yeah.
And then the decrease in our SB $1, is that because we got so many these crazy electric cars?
Excellent question, and Doug can maybe provide some insight on that. I would tell you that we have received some updated projections like a week ago, and obviously, through those projections we exceeded our projections from last year in SB1. We got more SB1 dollars than the state had projected. We're hopeful that that's the same this case. But obviously, as Andrea put, the SB1 dollars have worked to make up that shortfall that we see in those maintenance, but it's an ever-changing thing. Certainly, the conversion to electric will play an impact and a role in that. So,
and Doug, have you heard anything about what the state's going to do? I know they've had a lot of different studies, and maybe even they had some people that actually signed up to have their mileage and stuff counted, and what they're going to come up with on these road fees for people driving electric cars, because the gas, it's because they keep going down, even though the gas price goes up per gallon, but they're using less and less gallons every year because of this electric cars all over.
And more efficient.
And more
gas
efficient, yeah.
cars
My
too.
pickup gets better gas mileage than pickup I've ever owned my whole life. So still got the same. It's got more horsepower actually. So, is there anything coming from the state or anything to help us, maintain our roads that those electric cars tear up and don't pay for?
Doug Wilson, Road Commissioner, and for a couple of years now, the state has been looking at the option of doing a vehicle miles traveled rather than the gas tax. I haven't heard anything recently to suggest that it's making any specific progress at this time, but it is something that's being reviewed. Clearly the state, with the approval of SB 1, which generated substantial new dollars for the county, I'm confident that it's like so many other things, when legislation is passed, it's known that it's not the full solution, but it's about all that can be done at the time. I think right now, probably most everybody is looking more toward the federal government and waiting to see what they might do to help solve this problem with as they deal with the infrastructure package and the reauthorization of what is the Transportation Act from the federal level. So I think everyone's waiting to see what happens with those two things before any other steps are taken at this point.
So on SB $1, and when we started getting those, it seemed like we got a big jump right at first. Has it leveled off, or are we still getting a pretty big hunk each year?
The SB dollars come in multiple ways. The ones that are normally referred to as SB 1 are the ones that go into the maintenance and rehab, and that's what's in our SB 1 budget. But SB 1 also increased the gas tax that goes into all of our other state gas tax accounts, 2103, 2104. All of them got some increase. And so, through the regular road budget, there is some increase in funding, and then everything that's in the SB 1 budget, which is this year, the revenue for this year is around $6 million. That's all new, but there's also some new in the other
numbers. So, okay, thank you.
All right, anything else?
Taking 5.
What's
They're
that?
taking 5. Joe trying to come up with a number here.
Okay. And then we, actually, we haven't even reached that agenda item yet on SB 1 and all that. That'll be the public ways and facilities for roads and bridges. But we will, after we get that, then we will take a break for lunch, come back at 1 for the special districts, and then hit this agenda, this budget again.
Mr. Chairman, we did introduce the public ways already.
We moved into that?
Yes, because it's all grouped together under Public Works. We did announce it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember I asked that question on it, so.
That was under the special districts as well.
Right, so not the special districts budget, but the special districts administration budget, which lies with the Public Works Department.
All right. And that's been covered?
That's been covered.
Okay.
And Supervisor Wheeler, if I may, so I did clarify with the undersheriff that the off-highway vehicle fees goes up and down. They are projecting $300,000 for next year. If but they only spend when they get confirmation what they would get. So there's some equipment replacement. It's supposed to be used for the safety of OHV enthusiasts. So,
Right.
but the reason why the number has been up and down, it does go up and down. They get notified, and then they wait until they get confirmation of the actual fees that they were going to get before they.
Do we get paid once a year for that, or how do they do that?
Don't know the timing, but undersheriff's about to answer your question.
It's a very unusual funding cycle. We submit to them what they want, and they ping pong ball it back and forth a number of times. As far as the payments go, we'll let the undersheriff answer that. And Just real briefly, Chairman, since your next one is scheduled for 1 o'clock, I don't know what the board prefers, but if we do have members of the public show up at 1 o'clock, it's probably for the special districts budget. So you may wish to go through that one if there are members of the public here before you re-engage the ones that staff are here to represent.
Okay. And to answer the question in regards to the payment, generally it's annually. They have done it twice a year, but generally it's on an annual basis when we get the funds. We don't know what the grant is until we get it. That's why we project out. And then if we don't get what we...
Jumped up 100,000 from last year. Actually, I guess a lot of people they bought a lot of stuff this year during the pandemic. So with all that extra money they got, so.
Yeah, it's because we asked for a little bit more and we did get granted a couple vehicles in there. So again, every year it
Well,
goes
it's
up
really
and down.
helped you guys. I know some
Yes.
equipment you bought with it, and you have those shows up there and stuff.
Yes.
It's really helped, especially for our search and rescue.
That does.
It's really coming handy. So can you request like 500,000?
It's basically what we feel that we need for the next particular grant cycle.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, we have to request and put in the application what we are wanting to purchase. So
see.
generally it's
Okay,
vehicles.
So it's just not a certain amount of money goes to every county.
No.
It's what we might need.
Yeah, no, it's based on what our need is for the OHV program. Generally, it's vehicles and equipment for those vehicles.
How about, it won't work on boats though, right? Because that's.
No. Nope.
And they generally, if you get a vehicle granted to you this year, they generally are not going to grant a vehicle to you next year, and that adds to the fluctuation in the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office won't know until actually the next fiscal year begins what we've actually been granted from that grant. Starts in about January, February, takes till July to finish it off. Actually, they probably start gathering the information in October and November.
Right, for the next fiscal. This year, we did get a truck. So we got a off-road, it's a Trail Boss, a Chevy Trail Boss. So we probably will
I've
not
seen
get.
that. That's a-
Yeah, that black one? Yeah, we will not get a vehicle next year, chances are.
So if you put in for it, they can deny that?
Sure, yes.
Oh, okay.
And generally, that's how it works. If you get a vehicle this year, we put in for it next year, we won't get it for whatever reason they decide. But then we just ask for equipment or upkeep for the other equipment that we have.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Didn't know that, so.
All right, very good. Any other questions? If,
Mr. Chairman, can I make just as we go, there's one, I'm not even going to count them up right now, but does anyone have any individual questions on any of these ones? Maybe the department head doesn't have to come back after lunch if we don't have questions regarding their item?
Well, I got some, but it'd probably take all lunch.
Well, no, I'm not saying to go through lunch. I'm saying call out the ones that you had questions on, and then they would come back.
After lunch?
Yeah. Does that make sense?
okay, you're talking about the department heads who are here right now. So that would be behavioral health, public health, library, social services, our VSO,
Yeah.
and we've got our fleet division over here.
Yeah,
So
we put him to the end now.
why don't we just go ahead and, yeah.
If we're gonna have to be back at 1, let's go to lunch.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
it's 12
I
o'clock.
get. Never mind. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, before we go to lunch, and we'll pick up on behavioral health services next, are there any comments from the public that may wish to make a comment, whether they're here or on WebEx? This is your time. I see, looks like somebody from UC Extension. That would be later on, and I see Mark Foote. Mark, are you? Going once, going twice. Guess that's it.
Sharon, you're going to keep that public hearing open?
Yes.
Great.
All right. Well, we'll see everybody back here at 1 o'clock, and we'll pick up on our special districts public or here.
Mics are live. Good to go.
Good afternoon, everybody. We'll return, and we have our 1 o'clock scheduled hearing, the Board of Directors Special District / Public Works Department Administration Division. This will be an overview and presentation of the 21-22 proposed Public Works Special District budgets with direction as needed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt Treber, Chief of Development Services here. To present the budget with me is Andrea Saldati, Deputy Director of Public Works, Phil Toller, also Deputy Director, and I believe I saw Doug Wilson, our County Road Commissioner as well. So the budget books are available online at the administration website, and were provided to the board. There are a total of 33 water sewer districts. That's in your blue book, and 1 lighting district. For consideration by the Board of Directors today, and 120 separate road districts. That makes up your orange book there. So with that,
101?
120. 120 special districts for road maintenance purposes. And so staff, we are here and available for any questions that the board may have.
Very good. Are there any questions?
How many are in red?
So there are currently 15 districts that have some sort of debt outstanding. Of those 15, 7 of them are able to pay on those cash flow loans. The others do have either a rate study that does propose a payback, they just have not collected enough to start repaying, or they do need a rate study to implement some sort of debt repayment.
Are they in line for the rate studies?
They are in line, yes.
Are they doing them, or are they just in line?
We will start doing rate studies again in this next fiscal year in 21-22. Currently, there are 5 districts in their 5th year of those initial rate studies that we did. So we will develop a RFP again and have a contract to have a company, just like we did previously, do the bulk of them at the same time. That way the cost is a little bit less.
So we got 5 that's up for it right now.
Yes, there are 5 that are in their final year of that rate study.
And their rates were originally built into there was to pay for that study at the end of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They always pay for it. And so 5, and then we got 15, so that's 8, so that's 3 left that would needs to be done.
And Mr. Chairman, I'll piggyback a little bit on here. We do have 2 districts that are in the red currently. One of those districts, we recently entered into a mitigation agreement to offset that debt with the California High-Speed Rail Association. So that will be making up.
That's right.
Yeah, that debt. We do have another district out there that does have debt within that, and we are looking at some opportunities to offset that debt. There was some damage conducted and done to the system out there that's added to that, so we're looking to capture that from the party that caused that damage. So I'm being a little coy because it's still in negotiations on that aspect. So we do have two of those that we're also
So
working
that's two,
to
so it's just
wipe
one
out.
left and it's in the red, that we haven't, not doing anything right now?
Excuse me. So there are,
Said there's 15.
there's
7
15.
can pay, 5 you're doing a study on, those two, that's 7, so we have one left.
Not all of the 5 that are due for a rate study in this next fiscal year are necessarily the ones that are like in danger of not being able to pay.
Okay.
And there are a handful of districts that never had a rate study conducted when we did the first cohort of rate studies. So that's why the number's a little bit off.
So that 400,000 I was looking at before, that was just, that's all right.
The 400,000 that you were looking at before is the staff. It's the cost of staff that is within the 1340 district budget, special districts administration budget, and then again, all of the districts pay that money
Pay
back
into that.
in. Yes, yes. So there is no cost to the general
When I
fund.
first seen it, I just thought that was extra that they were paying, that we were paying out of our pockets.
No.
Compensate for long.
No,
So
the
that's really
districts-
good to know. I'm really happy about it.
Yeah, the districts pay everything back to 1340.
Really big good, so having you as our financial person on that, doing those others we had done before to get us to where we knew we had to do this, so it's nice to have that. We're up here now, get down here all the time. That really drove me crazy. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. We're definitely
Yeah, you're doing
moving
a great
in
job.
the right direction.
Supervisor Frazier.
Just on MD-10A, I see the revenue from the state water grant is $4,269,000. Does that not capture the funding for the treatment as well?
It does not capture that yet because we do not have a signed agreement for that yet.
Okay.
All right.
Bill, can I go ahead and ask you, let me hit this? Thank you, Chairman.
Yes.
The 22A on that, what's, when they built that, I remember they had the ribbon cutting and everything for it, and they, I remember the engineer who engineered that thing said that there was room to expand that for many years, side of it. That, we've never expanded from that day, have we, or is we still have that all available to expand that?
That's correct, Supervisor. If you're referring to the Oakhurst wastewater plant, there were 2 expansions done originally, and there hasn't been one since the main expansion.
So those are still available to be able to expand?
Yes, sir.
I told that somebody the other day and they didn't believe me. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't daydreaming when I heard that 15 years ago, because it was about 2007, I think, when they opened that up, so.
Absolutely, yeah, there's space, right, as I understand. The big concern there was spray field availability, but
We got
you may
that
recall the
taken care of.
board
Thank you guys
upgraded
for
and
that.
updated that contract, so lock that in long-term.
That's locked in to expand if we have to too, right? Matt? Thank you, guys. That's all I have on that.
I just had one, sorry, I had one more before. The SA-19 in the, it says it's in the county's maintained road system, but I know there's no direct assessment, but I thought it had its own road maintenance district.
You're correct, Supervisor. So going forward, and you'll see it reflected in this year's Orange Book. The right page here.
It's 141.
141. So after the sale of the water system and after all the checks and balances there, the monies that was left in that account are reflected now strictly for the road maintenance purposes. And I've been speaking with the homeowners association out there right now, gave them a list of suggestions out there. They had a recent annual properties meeting where they're prioritizing those roads, and they're supposed to give me the top 3, and we're going to look at them and see what we could get done for them. But their current funding for going forward for 21-22 would be the 88,000 shown in the orange book.
Perfect. I think, yeah, delivering a project and then going to them and saying, okay, just get an assessment to do these projects over this amount of time. It's, what, 5.3 miles of paved road. So I think it's something that we could do, and appreciate you doing that.
Sure.
And just wanted to point out that there is one less in here this year. For the first year, we're making a dent, one less water district. Now we're still first in number of water districts for the state, but one less. So,
But our lead is dwindling.
it's dwindling, yeah.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I would point out to the board's direction, page 106 of your orange book also calls out another district that the 3 of us have been discussing about a need to do something about it. If you pull that up, that's the Deadwood district. It is 2 properties that pay $100 a year, and their insurance for that district is $185 a year. So Mr. Toller has a whopping $15 to spend for road maintenance over a dirt road up in District 5 that we annually keep. So it was originally for property owners. Chancey Tribe purchased 2 of those parcels, de-annexed them from the maintenance district. So we'll probably be moving forward and approaching those property owners. So one more that we will hopefully have off the books here.
See, the insurance is $185, and the cost to audit it is, what, $500? So
Are we going to try to dissolve it?
Yes, that will be one that we move forward and make contact with those 2 property owners and would simply just, look to refund those the $478.
And how's our favorite one out there at your place out there, Rancho's?
it's good. It's
Didn't we have to come back and have a cost of living added to that sometime?
Which one? I'm guessing there's 95. It's paying its way. It went up from 28,000, like 69,000 looks like this year in terms of revenue.
Yeah, 23, 24, 24, 25 CPI.
Yeah, so MD 95, the rates that were adopted are good
98.
until 22, 23, and then after that, they have a CPI escalator.
Okay, because it just seemed like they didn't, and I thought we had to come back to different one. Good, so they're set now. Right?
Yeah.
Perfect. And they paid all their back dollars they had to?
Mm-hmm.
Settled? Great. Good job. You did a good one on that one after about 20 years of fighting them.
That was a tough one.
Get in that pickle.
All right, any other questions, comments?
Comment is just, I want to thank them, main thing. One of our biggest headaches we had for so many years, and it don't seem like I don't get the calls I used to get called. We've had some knockdown dragouts at some of those 218 hearings.
Yep.
What a difference. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. With that, we will now move back.
Can we make an motion or keep it open?
Chair,
or-
if you wouldn't mind opening up that 1 o'clock public hearing and
Okay.
then closing it when all comments are done. You can go back to the 9 a.m. hearing, and then the board can consider taking action to adopt all of the resolutions
On
on your
number
agenda
5.
today on 5A.
Right.
But the 1 o'clock hearing should be opened.
Okay,
the board.
so 1 o'clock, I'll open the hearing. Are there any public comments?
Done.
With that, I'll close the
Getting on you?
hearing. And what's that?
Getting on you? Just checking, you know.
So now we'll move back and continue the 9 a.m. hearing for the 21-22 proposed county budget.
Okay. So the next budget for your consideration is the Behavioral Health Services budget, which begins on page 499 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $35,894,377 represent a $1,222,770 increase over the current fiscal year, primarily due to the increase in the projected cost of contracted mental health services and increases in retirement benefits. This budget is 100% funded through state, federal, and other third-party sources with no net county cost. There are 170 allocated positions proposed in this budget, of which all are funded. Connie Moreno Peraza, Director of Behavioral Health, is available for any questions.
Just a statement. I just want to say thank you to Connie and her team over there. As someone who needed to find help for a family member, it was the care and attention, and just forever grateful.
Okay, if there's no other comments or questions, we'll move on to public health.
The next budget for your consideration is the public health budget, which begins on page 515 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $25,792,280 represent a $2,531,822 increase from the current fiscal year, primarily due to an increase in the cost of permanent and temporary salaries. This budget is 100% funded through state, federal, and other third-party sources with no net county cost. There are 124 allocated positions proposed in this budget, of which 9 are unfunded. Sarah Boss, Director of Public Health, is available for any questions.
Any questions? Hearing and seeing none.
The next budget for your consideration is the environmental health budget, which begins on page 531 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $1,778,364 represent an increase of $43,606 over the current fiscal year. This budget is 100% funded through state, federal, and other third-party sources with no net county cost. There are 15 allocated positions in this budget, of which 1 is unfunded. Matt Trieber, Chief of Development Services, is available for any questions.
Sounds like there's no questions.
The next budget for your consideration is the Refuse Disposal Liner Fund budget, which is on page 541 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $13,203,755 reflect an increase of $1,200,455 from the current fiscal year, primarily due to an increase in professional and specialized services. There are 5 allocated positions proposed in this budget, all of which are funded. Matt Trieber, Chief of Development Services, is available for any questions. The next set of
My only question on that, under the department in here, it's still listed as RMA Engineering. Wouldn't that have been?
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't that have been?
That's defunct.
ED, yeah, that, I mean, does it have to be there for org key or?
That's the name we don't repeat upstairs on the 3rd floor. The name shall not, I can't think of the Harry Potter phrase, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. So I think that's a matter of probably working with the auditor's office, auditor controller, and probably through administration staff to get that name more appropriately identified.
Yeah, I just thought it just seemed like it was like one last relic. I didn't know.
Yeah, and a sore bone.
Maybe it's Refuse Management Agency.
Oh, that's what it is. Yeah, refuse management. Good, well done.
Always has to be a good reason for it to have it. That's huge management.
That was good, Jay.
It is services.
The next set of departmental budgets for your consideration is the Department of Social Services budgets, which begin on page 549 of the budget book. The total recommended expenditures of $106,482,615 represent an increase of $7,098,527 or over the current fiscal year. The total estimated net county cost of all social services programs is $3,382,645, which represents an increase of $368,479 over the current fiscal year based on projected third-party revenues and realignment revenues available for all programs. There are a total of 348 positions allocated to this department, of which all are funded. Deborah Martinez, Director of Social Services, is available for any questions.
So that one is 100% all paid for by the feds and state, right?
Oh, got to come on up and,
Sorry.
Yeah.
So Deborah Martinez, Director of Social Services. So I believe our net, the way that we see it, it's about 2.5%, but there is approximately up that, was that 8% with the portion of the realignment that is attributed to social services, that's required to be attributed to social services. Is that correct, Joel? About 8%?
Yes.
So 8% of 51,000 is 51 million is $8 million it costs us, huh?
It's, well, a majority of that would be covered by realignment. Only the balance is covered by net county costs. So functions like, and it's not straight percentage, it's functions like general assistance. It's a county-only program. That has to be, but they have to exist for us to have, to run the other programs. So that is how we pay our minimum,
It's just other programs.
Right, like general
Okay.
assistance will
I
never,
know.
yeah. It's a local program only, and then for like foster care and adoptions, there's a 15% share of cost. Realignment covers a portion of it. The balance has to be local dollars, because there's never enough realignment, but we're required to pay the 15%.
Good.
Good.
okay, any other questions, comments? Thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the Veteran Services budget, which begins on page 591 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $298,207 represent a $44,593 increase over the current fiscal year. There are 4 allocated positions in this budget, of which 1 is recommended unfunded. Josh Christopherson, Veteran Services Officer, is available for any questions.
You need more? Do you need more people? No, I just want to make sure our veterans are taken care of. I used to get quite a few complaints. Really nice not getting any, so I hope because you're doing a good job, or because at first, COVID first started, and about the time you started, it was,
Been an interesting ride.
that it has. So
Yeah.
you caught up with most of them, you think, or?
Yeah, so Oakhurst in
Pull it
particular,
off the guy.
Oakhurst in particular is a very difficult area because it's so isolated. We got a lot of older vets out there. Oh, sorry. So during the pandemic, we moved over to a mostly digital format. So signatures could be done over the phone and all that good stuff. Well, folks in Oakhurst, a lot of them didn't even know how to use a smartphone. And so we're
I know.
so we're finding difficulty. So if I could get another rep and stick them up in Oakhurst at least 2 or 3 days a week, I think it'll solve a lot of problems up there, and then allow us to handle the case load. Where it's been increasing since the pandemic's been easing up.
Well, a lot of them, retire up there,
Yes.
get away from.
And then the sad thing is, less than 30% of veterans are receiving benefits. And yeah, it's pretty sad. And one of the things I'm unable to do right now is outreach, because I have a caseload that the rep should typically handle.
Are they, is that, we get money for funding those positions?
Supervisor, to clarify, there is 1 position being added, going from 3 to 4, but the position is recommended to be added as unfunded. and we monitor the year if we can afford to fund that position in the middle of the year to match with the workload. So at this point, I think we tried to get there, it was fully funded immediately, but with the budget, with the budget crunch, it's being 100% discretionary, we're proposing to add that position as unfunded for now.
Let's take a half from DA and a half from HR, and we've got enough to fund them. Huh? Don't stutter.
Well, the additional funds that the HR is receiving is subvented, so we can't simply redirect those. But, we'll work together with the
Veterans
VSO.
is not important to HR, I mean,
Are there
Vetting
funds from the
programs?
VA that, or any grants or anything like that for outreach? I would imagine there's got to be something.
I would think so, especially for the veterans.
There's
So-
one grant that floats around, Prop
Right.
63.
So I would clarify to supervisor that it's not, at the risk of sounding defensive here, we have continuously increased over the years and funded veteran services. So I didn't want to leave people with the impression that we don't, recommend funding. It was just hard to immediately
No,
fund it.
I don't think you've
right?
ever done that
Right.
when I've been here.
So going back a few years, we didn't even have a full-time VSO. So now we're building it up to a department of hopefully 4 by middle of the year. So I think if it's acceptable for the board, as soon as the budget's adopted, we would look at, we would monitor revenue and see if we can fund it, because I believe the board has delegated the authority to fund an unfunded position to the CAO, and if that's a priority of the board, we will make it as a
Well, our
first order of
veterans
business.
should be
yeah.
our priority.
I
Commissioner
don't disagree,
of Fire
sir.
And sheriff, but also, how about, do you ever work with the Veterans Hospital up there that they've got? I mean,
I have not yet.
why don't you contact with them and see if maybe, we haven't got an office up there, right?
Yeah, the Oakhurst Government Building we're sharing with.
Oh, okay, perfect. I forgot about that. But if you,
Definitely
I don't
Agnes
know if
Lincoln's
they
room.
have any extra dollars in that hospital that they could help you with any of this kind of stuff, or?
Unfortunately, no. We kind of operate under two different agencies under the VA. VA is kind of an umbrella, and so I work for the Veterans Benefits Administration.
Oh, okay.
And the hospital is the Veteran Health.
Totally different. Too bad, because, I'm thinking they could recommend people to come.
Well,
use the
definitely that.
benefits.
Doing the networking and getting them to send folks over to us is ideal.
Could have a veteran come in there and say, I don't get no benefits from nobody.
Exactly.
Well, hey, the man to call, right?
Exactly.
Mr. Varney.
So earlier in this calendar year, the board forwarded a letter to the state asking the state VSO to release more of the VSO money to the 58 counties. I have not seen anything in either the governor's May revise or in what the Senate has suggested, so I didn't know if either Josh or Joel had seen anything related to the state releasing more of the money to the local folks.
I'm not aware of any at this time, but
The last email I received, they were still saying, send in more letters, so to garner the support.
Okay.
Need more, let us know.
What's that?
You need more letters, let us know. We'll write them. Thank you, John.
All right, you bet.
Thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the Community Action Partnership budget, which begins on page 595 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $307,797 represent a $61,962 increase over the current fiscal year and is based on the actual cost of the CAPMC Executive Director and the level of pass-through funding for the Senior Congregate Meals Program. CAO staff is available for any questions on this budget. The next budget for your consideration is the Library Services budget, which begins on page 599 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $2,012,664 represent a $120,346 increase over the current fiscal year. There are 17 allocated positions for this budget, of which 3 are unfunded. Krista Riggs, Library Director, is available for any comments or questions.
Just keep building it up. You're doing a great job, all I can say.
The next budget for your consideration is the contingencies budget, which begins on page 605 of the budget book. There are no recommended appropriations for this budget in the budget year. Due to the current budget crisis and continued focus to fund departmental item budgets to reasonably appropriate levels, there is less need to fund contingency appropriations. This budget has no allocated positions. We are available for any questions. The next budget for your consideration is the Cooperative Extension budget, which begins on page 607 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $96,103 is an increase of $2,364 from the current fiscal year. We, as well as Karmjot Randawa, Fresno Madera Cooperative Extension Director, are available for any questions. The next,
I'd like to just see how it's doing. Is she on the Zoom?
Yes, I'm here, Supervisor.
They gave us a breakdown of it a couple of years ago when they took it over, and I was just wondering how it's working.
Things are going fantastic. Thank you so much for asking. As you are all aware, we've now relocated into the new building that we have at the old Sheriff's Department, and things have been fantastic. We have been open throughout the pandemic without interruption, and our 4-H programming as well as Master Gardener programming has grown throughout the pandemic time, and we've been able to provide support and rearrange our education materials not only for our CalFresh Nutrition, Healthy Family, Healthy Living programs, as well as our 4-H and Master Gardener programs, but our farm advisors and our research academics that provide support to our local farmers in Madera County have been able to do more field visits and site visits to diagnose any illnesses and review any field visits more in the last year than we ever have before. And so things have been going extremely well. We are appreciative of the board for supporting us and making the transition to our new building, which we're excited to have you all join us on July 6th for the ribbon cutting. But overall, things have been going really well, and we appreciate all the support that the county has given for us to continue to provide research and extension support to Madera County on behalf of Cooperative Extension.
Great.
the next budget for your consideration is the Fleet Services budget, which begins on page 615 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $3,114,514 represent a $212,612 increase over the current fiscal year, primarily based on the projected cost of maintaining the county's fleet and scheduled replacements. Expenditures in this budget are offset primarily by mileage charges to user departments as well as vehicle maintenance charges to subvented departments. There are 6 positions allocated to this budget, all of which are funded. We, as well as Michael Motz, Chief Civil Deputy Sheriff, are available for any questions.
Since you had to stay, how's it going over there?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to find out too. Thank you.
I believe it's going very well. We're working on efficiency, and that's our goal, is to be as much as efficient as we possibly can. Working on different programs to make things a lot more streamlined than they have in the past.
Second thing I was going to ask on front part, summary you put out on the phase 3 campus 28 campus solar system. You know, when we was out there that day, we talked about putting solar on that, you know, especially to get all those expensive cars out of the sun. Really like to follow up on that. I think that we get some of those grants from OSU or something like that to put on that. I think it'd be the time to do that because
Supervisor Wheel, I would like to respond to the solar. That part was also looked at during the Road 28. So in the time we worked with NG to expand the Road 28 campus solar field, the central garage was looked at. They're all under the same offsetting program with PG&E. So the best bang for buck is to expand the ground mount solar to offset their bills. Now, the shade for the cars could be a separate project, but it's much cheaper to discuss that as a shade structure as opposed to a solar shade. We get a lot of requests, General Services gets a lot of requests to evaluate solar shade structures. Depending on how big you can build it, it may not be the best approach.
bang for a buck, I agree, but we got expensive cars sitting out there burning up.
Correct, and that's why.
So you got to offset some of those ideas too, because
correct.
I just maybe it'd be cheaper to get their carports or something to put some out there. I don't know what it is, but I hate seeing those cars sitting out there like that, you know.
And I believe for every proposal that we get for that, we do look at it as both. So I think we can look at the fleet services.
I just like to follow through on that because, and I mean, even if the bang for the buck wasn't quite there, what are we losing here on these value of these cars when we go resell them?
Right.
So there's other ways to offset some of those costs. So.
Correct.
I know what it does to cars.
Yeah, it does. The heat does do crazy things. The weather does crazy things.
Thank you for a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next budget for your consideration is the microwave radio services budget, which begins on page 623 of the budget book. Recommended expenditures of $435,365 represent an $8,832 increase over the current fiscal year based on the projected operating cost of the system. This is not a general fund budget, and there are no positions included in this budget. We, as well as Tanya Say, Chief Information Officer, are available for any questions.
Is it working?
Yes,
far as we can tell.
this year it's been we haven't had the crazy things like the fire in the radio vault on Deadwood or any of the weather-related interruptions. We are hopeful that as you're passing your budget, that Fresno County is passing their budget, and that there's at least 2 radio technicians in their budget, because I know they're putting a lot of pressure on their staff. That's who does our work as well, to keep both the counties working well.
All right, very good. It looks like the next item we'll be looking at are the proposed special revenue budgets.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
These special revenue fund budgets represent governmental funding streams that are tied to a specific purpose, like a grant or realignment. They are budgeted annually to meet statutory requirements and to provide an added level of transparency. These funds are budgeted as operating transfers in to operating funds like the general fund, where they are utilized for operations. Staff from various departments are available for any questions you may have on any of these budgets.
Any questions, comments? All right, thank you. This is a hearing, and I'd like to open it up to the public for any comments you'd have in regards to the balance of the proposed county budget, as well as the proposed, or the special revenue funds. All right, we'll close the hearing.
I move to approve the budget for this year and encumbering all future revenues in excess of projections for future debt reduction.
Okay, very good. We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution described in 5A.
Well,
I did.
So we can have some discussion now. I had a few more questions on the front part of this.
Sure.
Got to find them, so you got to be patient with me.
While Tom's looking for it, I just wanted to, I really like the inclusion of the org charts. I don't remember ever seeing those before. That's new, right? I don't ever remember seeing them.
We've had them, but we continue to work with the departments to update those as the position summaries are updated.
Yeah.
Okay, on page 8, V111, it's got all our new key infrastructure community highlights. I just thought it'd be nice if they put in there I had it on there, that solar system for the garage too, but no mention of the Oakhurst Government Center and the Flash Courthouse. We didn't put that on there. I think that's pretty important for this county. Okay. Answered that question. I really still have concerns on page 10, last bullet point on our general fund balance at 7.4 million. I think we got to really work on that. Yeah, we're going to build that up some way, up where like most people have. Nice letter you wrote there, Jay. When what I was, almost every page here, I had some questions on some of them, but it's all just, probably just, maybe you could explain it. The CAO recommendation 21-22 budget. On here. And sometimes they differ quite a bit from the increase or decrease or department request. I mean, did you make most of these decisions, Jay, or with the department heads or what have you? I mean, some of them are pretty drastically different.
Supervisor Wheeler, I can answer actually that question.
Okay, I mean, it's probably both of you doing
It's just
this.
one department. It's the fire department. Because the department requests, the fire department will always have to request the maximum contract that we sign with CAL FIRE. The CAO recommended always reflects what we project, what we're actually going to spend.
Okay.
Because, and that's been the practice for several years now. It's a little bigger this year because in the CAL FIRE contract, we have the Station 3 FTE, so we had to take that out. So, but
I remember that when they brought that to.
but that's the only, in every budget, it is only the fire department budget where we have that difference.
Really? Okay. Okay, the other one was on page 15. The CED under protective inspection, what does CED mean? And then under other protection, the next item, 05900 CED planning.
It's community economic development.
Okay, I wrote that down, see, and I didn't know. That was one acronym, I did not know what it was.
We'll make note to spell it out.
Yes,
Yes.
It used to be spelled RMA.
Redhead, I'm gonna come down there. Okay, committee, can I do that? That's good. Okay. Okay, and then on the revenue, that's where I really had some questions on the differences between the CAO recommendations and the 10-month actual, which I know that's only 10 months, not 12, but some of them are really drastically different. What we approved last year and stuff. I mean, I'm gonna take the first one I got on, the sales and use tax. We had 7,238 in 2021. 10 months is 5,333,000, and somebody guesstimated 7,921, which is about 700,000 more. Yes. And I was just wondering, even with the pandemic, if is there more sales, or was we just guesstimating on that?
Supervisor, the reason why the 10-month actuals is so low is because it really is missing 4 months as opposed to 2.
Oh,
it's 2 months delayed, so we accrue July and August receipts, which really pertain to May and June. So
we got the other 4
right,
months.
that's why it's always so high.
Okay, well, that would make a big difference on all these then, because that's where I had a lot of the questions on it.
A lot of it is timing with the 10-month actuals. Like, for example, social services, as of end of April, they might have only gotten 2 quarters worth. So there's always the projection would always be much larger than a 10-month actual just because of time.
And then we're actually on 11. So on the public assistance on page 21, that's going to be quite a bit of difference. Is that from the realignment and COVID dollars? Number 650910.
Okay. I'm sorry, Supervisor, could you repeat the account number, please?
It's on page 21, 650910, public assistance realignment.
Supervisor, because public assistance realignment is sales tax based, it has the same behavior.
Same kind of thing,
It's
that
4 months
months?
behind, yes.
Okay, yeah, but it's really jumped up from last year is what I meant.
Right, and I think some of that, I think some of that is, they pay them growth and they have followed this calculation. So you have to finish the year, calculate growth, and they pay the growth. Now, I think what happened here is likely we received some state backfill for realignment in the current year. So that might be skewing the numbers a little bit.
And on page 22, DA state prison crime reimbursement dollars, 652,503. Those numbers I don't understand. We actually only had 125,000. We had budgeted, approved 432, and so far this 8 months we've got 182. We're expecting another 463. Why the difference in actual revenues of 125 grew up to 463?
I'm sorry, Supervisor, we'll have to do a little bit more research on that. I believe that is the DA realignment, but I am not 100% sure.
Okay. Maybe just make a note and get that to me. And what is the homeowner's property tax relief? Do we get money from the state or the feds for that?
Yeah, it's a constant amount. I don't know the full specifics, but I think it's some form of tax in lieu payment from the state related to post Prop 13. I don't know. We can in the same vein we can get you a more detailed answer on that, but it's always been the same amount.
Okay. And then on same thing, page 22, the state the waste tire enforcement deal. If we shows that we're not going to have no money on that, or that was a grant, I think. Are we not going to get that anymore? Does the state still offer that, or?
Supervisor, I have to follow up with you. Yeah.
That's a big hit up there because we fill that trailer up every time. Here comes Matt. Maybe he's got an answer for that. IGM tire amnesty. That one too. Okay, no, you can get them, if you don't have them now, that's fine. And the state abandoned vehicle fee, I keep getting calls from these, couple of them, especially tow truck drivers up there. And it says we have money coming in for that, and he says that everybody that pays a license fee pays into that, and we should be getting a bigger share of that. Is there any way we can find out about that?
I'm sorry, Supervisor, I lost track of the account.
Oh, okay, it's 654511, page 23.
If I just going back on the waste tire, it's actually within the planning division budget. That grant is administered by our code enforcement office, as well as abandoned vehicle. But the waste tire, we are getting funding for that, and it is incorporated in the planning division budget.
But don't show it in here. It only shows $500 or something.
Yeah, but, and the reason maybe for that, and Joel and I can talk offline maybe, but it is in the planning division budget. It does show for revenue. It does capture the revenue going into 660,800 for our estimated revenues within the planning division
Oh,
budget.
it's in a different number then.
And I think, and that's not, it's not a good answer, but it's not an uncommon thing that the actuals post in a different number. We try to get ahead of it, but
Not always?
not always. So there's going to be some level of that here. Again, not an excuse, but we can clean it up. We've cleaned up some. Obviously, there are more to clean up, but that is prevalent, and it's a lot of basically past practice that we need to check, that we need to correct.
Okay. And then in lieu of taxes, is that those forced dollars?
1.3 million, yes, it's for loss to compensate us for lost taxes
So we
for
still
federal
get
lands.
some of those monies, does that money go into Title III and those different ones too?
The property tax in lieu currently goes to our general fund as part of discretionary, all of it.
How about Title III dollars then?
I'm not I
That
think
comes
Title
from
III
that
is
same thing,
separate.
It comes from the,
I think it goes, I think we'll have to check on that. I don't think this comes from the same
it
pot.
comes
I think
in
it's
lieu
separately.
of the forest, of the logging.
Right.
And we get that every year, and every year they say they're gonna stop doing it, but each year I read in the papers that they're
I do believe there's a special revenue fund for Title III, and that goes, whatever's specific for that logging goes to the Title III.
Yeah, and
This
that
is-
goes to two things. We use it for
Right.
the deputy sheriffs and
Right.
whatever they need, and for doing projects.
For the
up
certain,
there.
yeah. Right, and I think that's carved out separately from the property taxes in lieu of from the federal funds. I don't
Right.
believe they
That's
come
where it
from the
came
same
from,
pot,
right.
yeah.
So I thought it always under that, was under in that in lieu of tax law that covers those.
Right, it might be, but it might be a separate payment, because
Would you check on that for me?
We'll check on that, yeah.
That's, we used to get millions of that, you know. Just our own school in North Fork used to get about $400,000 a year.
Right.
Just because, and every school got it up there, and plus the county got, and that's right, half of that Title III dollars goes for our roads, it goes in amount too. We get, say, $100,000 this day for the sheriff and the projects we do for forest stuff, get that same amount for roads in those districts, so that's 655,800. Is that what you're looking for? And then at 657008, the Health Administration, Madera County Hospital. Explain that one for me, please.
Health administration.
It's on page 23, also the last one.
So we'll have to get back to you, that supervisor. We'll have to get together with Sarah Boss to see if this is related to the IGT.
That's, okay. That business improvement district, that's the dollars that goes to the Visit Bureau, right, on page
Yes.
25?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The BID?
Yeah. All we do is keep out our administration costs, right?
If any, I think there's very little that the tax collector keeps just to administer. There's a set amount. I think it's 2.5%. I could
know
be
it's
wrong.
something
Yeah.
like that when we passed.
But yeah, all of that is pulled together and forwarded to the Visitors Bureau.
Okay. And I didn't understand this one either. Booking fees, county arrests. It's on page 25, 661502. What? Only $573 last year revenue. I'm not sure what that's for. You know, Jay, by any chance? Ex-sheriff?
You know, I don't. That might be for out-of-town bookings, like outside of Madera County, people being booked at the Department of Corrections, because the state is currently reimbursing for the daily booking fees, and that's part of your agreement with the city is to not charge either of the city booking fees as long as the state continues to reimburse you, the county, for the two cities booking people there. So an incredibly small amount of money. That's about 4 booking fees.
I know,
if that's
couldn't
what
be
it's
very
for.
much, so very many, I mean. We're getting there. So right now on page 28, total financing sources revenue, 335,177. Correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's up $5 million from last year. But where's the other 30-something coming from? Actually, 80-something, 81.
Right, so the general fund discretionary revenues are, sorry, say, Could you repeat the question again, sir?
It's just what our actual
The
revenue.
81 million, are you referring to the 81 million, the non-general fund financing sources?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So the 81 million refers to the other non-general fund budgets like roads department, refuse liner fund. That's part of the 414 million, right? So that's what the 81
That's
million
what the
is.
difference
right?
is on that. Be all right.
Correct, correct. So adding the two together would get us the total 400 million budget. But because they're not general fund operations, they're an enterprise fund. In the case of road fund, they have to be separate from the general fund. They're labeled here as non-general fund financing.
That's 81 million. You want me to ask any more questions?
No, we're ready. So.
You are. That's all I got wrote down. Not bad, huh? You guys did a good job on this, I'll tell you that.
Thank you, sir.
Playing pretty good. Sometimes I just got to catch up on some of those little things to figure out what in the heck they are.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I believe we have a first and a second, and we just need a roll call vote.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Chairman Poitras?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
The way Letty went up to that microphone, I was thinking she was going to say no. She said,
Thank you, supervisors.
yes.
Thank you, Joel, very much. I appreciate all the background you gave me. So when I was reading this material, it made it a lot easier. So I appreciate you and your staff.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we shall adjourn.
Huh?
Till tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a question on that, boss.
Go ahead.